Beneath the dust of forgotten ages lies a world that refuses to give up its secrets. Across deserts, jungles, and ocean floors stand silent monuments and shattered relics. The bones of civilizations that rose and fell long before our histories were written. They speak of genius and mystery, of builders who shaped the earth with impossible precision, and of stories so old that they seem to drift between myth and memory. Modern archaeology has uncovered much, yet some sites resist explanation. Cyclopean stones cut as if by machines we no longer possess, cities swallowed by the sea and left undisturbed for millennia, texts that hint at lost knowledge, forbidden histories, and ancient catastrophes that reset the human story. Tonight, we journey into the heart of these enigmas, from Göbekli Tepe to the Sphinx, from drowned cities to star maps carved in stone. This is not a search for answers, but a slow walk through the twilight of human memory. Settle in, let the world grow quiet, and join us as we explore the most terrifying ancient mysteries that still cannot be explained by modern archaeologists anywhere. Chapter 1. Göbekli Tepe, the world's first temple high on a low, rounded hill in southeastern Turkey, lies a place that has rewritten the opening chapters of human history. The site is quiet now, windswept and bathed in the pale light of the Anatolian plateau. But beneath its soil, a revolution of thought has unfolded. Göbekli Tepe, whose name means Potbelly Hill, was first surveyed in the 1960s, dismissed as nothing more than a Byzantine cemetery. It was only in 1994 that Klaus Schmidt, a German archaeologist from the German Archaeological Institute, recognized what was really hidden here. The world's oldest known monumental sanctuary, older than Stonehenge by 6 millennia, and built by people who, by every measure of conventional archaeology, should not have been able to build anything like it. When excavations began, they revealed a series of circular enclosures, some as wide as 20 meters. Their walls lined with limestone pillars in the shape of giant T's. These pillars, some weighing between 10 and 20 tons, were laboriously carved and set upright, often in pairs. Two taller central pillars dominated each enclosure, standing like silent guardians. Their surfaces were decorated with reliefs, foxes racing along the stone, wild boars, snakes, scorpions, cranes, and vultures with wings outstretched. The art is detailed, deliberate, and strangely alive, a bestiary of the lost world of the early Holocene. What is perhaps most astonishing is the age. Radiocarbon dating of the deepest levels places the earliest construction around 9600 BCE, at the very dawn of the Neolithic, when the last ice age had barely ended. This was a time when, according to most textbooks, humans were still wandering bands of hunter-gatherers surviving on wild grain and game. Göbekli Tepe challenges this picture entirely. The site suggests that people gathered here, in large enough numbers to organize labor forces, quarry and move stone, and plan ceremonial spaces on a scale never before seen, and they did so before the invention of pottery, metallurgy, or even permanent village life as we understand it. The hill is not a single layer of history but a stratified monument, with at least 4 major building phases stacked atop one another like a palimpsest of ritual. Each layer seems to have been intentionally buried before the next was built, an act that continues to puzzle researchers. Why would the builders cover up their great sanctuaries, only to construct new ones nearby? Some archaeologists have suggested that this was part of a cyclical ritual, perhaps connected to death and renewal, or to astronomical events marking the passage of time. Others see in this deliberate burial a kind of proto-archiving, a way of preserving the sanctity of a place that had served its purpose. The human figures carved into the pillars are no less enigmatic. On several of the central stones, faint but unmistakable arms are carved along the shaft, bending at the elbow, with hands clasped at the front of the pillar as if the stones themselves are anthropomorphic beings, standing upright as deified ancestors or spirit guardians. This sense of presence is amplified by the spatial arrangement. Stepping into an excavated enclosure feels like entering a council of stone beings, each facing inward toward the center, as though participating in a rite. What makes this all the more mysterious is the absence of domestic architecture. Unlike later Neolithic villages, Göbekli Tepe has yielded no houses, no hearths for daily cooking, no refuse pits typical of habitation. This was not a settlement in the usual sense. It was, in every way we can measure, a place set apart, a sacred space built for ceremony. That discovery has led to a radical proposition. Perhaps it was not agriculture that gave rise to religion and complex society, but rather the other way around. Perhaps the act of gathering to build and worship here created the social conditions that eventually led to farming. In this view, Göbekli Tepe stands at the threshold where spirituality gave birth to civilization. Yet questions remain that are harder to answer. How did people who had no beasts of burden move stones weighing many tons from the nearby quarries? Experiments suggest teams of dozens could have dragged them using wooden sledges, but the sheer scale implies a level of coordination beyond what is usually attributed to nomadic bands. How were these efforts organized? Was there an emerging priestly class, a council of elders, or a shamanic order guiding the construction? And what did the carvings mean to those who gathered here? Some scholars interpret the vulture imagery as evidence of a death cult, pointing to parallels with sites where excarnation, the exposure of bodies to birds, was practiced. Others see a symbolic representation of cosmology, a vision of the world where animals, humans, and spirits coexisted in a delicate balance. Even the landscape itself may hold clues. Göbekli Tepe is positioned on a ridge overlooking the Haran Plain, a fertile region often called the Garden of Eden for its association with early agriculture. Some have speculated that its builders were among the first to experiment with cultivating wild wheat, which still grows abundantly in the surrounding hills. If true, Göbekli Tepe may mark not just the dawn of religion, but the dawn of domesticated food production, the pivot on which human history turned out as excavations have continued. They have revealed that what is visible today is only a fraction of the site. Ground-penetrating radar has identified dozens more enclosures still buried beneath the hill, suggesting that Göbekli Tepe was not a single shrine, but a sprawling ceremonial complex used for centuries, perhaps even millennia. And then, sometime around 8000 BCE, it was all deliberately entombed. Sand and rubble were brought in to cover the enclosures, preserving them for 10,000 years. Why? Was it fear of something, a plague, a change in climate, a cosmic omen? Was it reverence, an intentional closing of a chapter before moving on to a new way of life? Or was it an act of collective memory, a message meant to be uncovered by distant descendants? Whatever the reason, its preservation has gifted us a time capsule from humanity's earliest dawn, a direct glimpse into a world otherwise lost. Standing there today, with the wind brushing across the plateau, it is hard not to feel the weight of time pressing in. The stones, weathered but unbroken, seem to hum with a memory older than writing, older than the first kings and empires. They ask us to reconsider what we thought we knew about ourselves, about when we began to build, to worship, to dream of eternity. And as the sun sets behind the Taurus Mountains, casting long shadows across the enclosures, the site seems to retreat once more into its ancient silence. Whatever truths Göbekli Tepe holds, they remain partly veiled, inviting us deeper into the mystery. And beyond this hill, there are other stones, other ruins, waiting to speak. Chapter 2: The Hypogeum of Ħal-Saflieni. The unassuming streets of Paula, Malta lies a place unlike any other on earth, hidden from the light of the sun. Carved deep into the living limestone around 6,000 years ago, rests the Hypogeum of Ħal-Saflieni, a subterranean necropolis and temple that seems to blur the line between the realms of the living and the dead. Discovered in 1902, during the construction of a modern home, the Hypogeum was unearthed entirely by accident. Workers cutting into the rock for sustenance stumbled into chambers that no human eye had seen for thousands of years. What they found was not a cave nor a simple burial pit, but an entire world hollowed out of stone, a labyrinth of passages, spiral carvings, red ochre paintings, and chambers that reverberated with sound in ways that defied explanation. It was as if the ancients had engineered the underworld itself. The Hypogeum is not merely one chamber but a vast multi-level complex. Its construction dates back to around 4000 BCE, though some archaeologists believe it may have roots reaching even further into prehistory. The site extends across 3 levels, descending more than 35 feet beneath the surface. The upper level contained small niches and burial spaces. The middle level opens into grander halls, including the so-called Oracle Room, whose acoustics remain one of its most enduring enigmas. The lowest level is thought to have served as a final resting place, a chamber of darkness reserved for the dead. Inside these levels, archaeologists uncovered the remains of over 7,000 individuals. Their bones lay mingled in the dust of ages, arranged in collective deposits rather than isolated graves. This was not a cemetery in the modern sense. It was a communal descent into the earth. The living brought their dead here, lowering them into chambers carved by hand, and in the dim glow of torches, must have whispered prayers into the stone. Yet it is not the sheer number of burials that draws attention, but the anomalies among them. Early reports describe elongated skulls, distinctly different from the typical Maltese population. These skulls, some with cranial capacity beyond normal proportions, were recorded, photographed, and catalogued, and then, curiously, vanished from official display. For decades, researchers whispered of their absence. Some suggest they were destroyed or quietly hidden away. Others believe they were spirited off into private collections. What remains today are fragments of evidence, tantalizing yet incomplete, as if the most unsettling aspects of the Hypogeum were deliberately erased. Even without these remains, the Hypogeum radiates mystery. On the walls of its chambers, spiral motifs curl like whirlpools of eternity, painted in red ochre, the sacred color of blood and rebirth. These designs echo the same patterns found in temples above ground across Malta at Najdra, Kagar, Kim, and Taksim. But here underground, the spirals seem to draw the visitor inward, not upward. They guide the mind into a journey of descent, into memory, into death, into silence. The most extraordinary chamber is known as the Oracle Room. Small in size yet overwhelming in effect, its walls are finely polished, its ceiling domed like the vault of a primitive cathedral. Here, a single voice uttering low chants can trigger acoustic effects of astonishing power. Tests have shown that sounds at a frequency around 110 Hz resonate through the entire complex, vibrating not only in the ear but in the bones of the body. A chant begun in the oracle room does not remain there. It spreads like an invisible river, flooding the chambers with sound that seems to emanate from nowhere and everywhere at once. Modern researchers have studied these acoustics with fascination. At such frequencies, the human brain itself can be affected, altering states of consciousness, inducing sensations of timelessness, visions, or a deepened sense of awe. Was this intentional? Did the builders of the Hypogeum design their chambers with sonic precision, creating an instrument carved out of stone to guide the mind into altered realms? If so, this would make the Hypogeum one of the earliest known examples of sacred architecture engineered to transform human perception. In this dim labyrinth, the line between archaeology and myth blurs. One can imagine ancient priests or shamans standing in the oracle room, their chants spiraling outward, guiding the mourners gathered in darkness. The sound would not have been heard merely with the ears, but felt throughout the body, a vibration binding the living to the dead, uniting them in an experience beyond words. The deeper one explores, the more the Hypogeum suggests an intentional dialogue with death. The lowest chambers are entirely lightless, accessible only by narrow shafts. Here, the air grows heavy, and the silence presses down like a physical weight. To descend here must have been to enter another world, one where the dead surrounded the living, and where sound itself became the language of the gods. And yet, there are unsettling silences within the record. Much of the Hypogeum's original content, its human remains, its artifacts, is no longer available for study. Early excavators removed thousands of bones and objects without systematic documentation. Reports mentioned unusual statues and figurines, including the famous Sleeping Lady, a small clay figure of a reclining woman found within the complex. She lies with her eyes closed, her body at rest, as if embodying the eternal sleep of death. But how many other figures were taken and never returned? How many objects now lie forgotten in private hands, their context forever lost? The erasures are as haunting as the discoveries. Why were the elongated skulls quietly removed from public display? Why do early reports describe anomalies that later publications omit? What knowledge might have been suppressed, and to what end? These questions linger, unanswerable, like echoes fading into stone. Still, the architecture remains, and the Hypogeum continues to speak through its silence. Every polished wall, every spiral carved into the rock, every chamber aligned with hidden harmonics, suggests that this was not merely a tomb but a temple, a place where death was not an ending, but a passage, a threshold to be crossed with the aid of ritual, sound, and descent. To walk through the Hypogeum today is to step into a dream carved in stone. Modern visitors are carefully limited in number, their time underground strictly controlled to protect the fragile environment. Even so, the sense of otherness is overwhelming. The air is cool and still, the walls curve with ancient intention, and when sound stirs, even the smallest breath or whisper seems to carry weight, as though the chambers themselves are listening. No definitive answers remain. The builders left no written texts, no records of their purpose. The dead themselves have been scattered, their bones moved from the sanctity of their resting places. What endures is the architecture, the spirals, the resonance of sound. It is enough to remind us that 6,000 years ago, on a small island in the Mediterranean, human beings carved a cathedral beneath the earth, one that still vibrates with secrets we are only beginning to perceive. The Hypogeum does not reveal its truths. It absorbs questions, echoing them back in whispers that fade into the stone. We stand at the edge of its chambers, listening for voices that may never return, wondering whether the answers were deliberately hidden or whether the mysteries of the underworld were never meant to be fully unveiled. In the silence of the oracle room, where sound lingers like a ghost in the air, we are left with a question older than history itself. Did the ancients build these halls to speak with their dead, or to awaken something far older, buried in the darkness below? Chapter 3. Nan Madol, the Venice of the Pacific. Far across the western Pacific, beyond the familiar trade routes of history, lies an island where time seems to hesitate. The island of Pohnpei, lush and humid, rises from the ocean in a cloak of mist and greenery. Its shores are fringed with mangroves, and its interior is veined with streams and waterfalls. But it is out on the tidal flats, where the sea and land blend into a brackish lagoon, that one of the most astonishing architectural sights on earth reveals itself. Here stands Nan Madol, a city of stone and water. Unlike anything else in the ancient world, Nan Madol is not a single structure but an entire complex of over 90 artificial islets, built from black basalt columns that resemble giant logs turned to stone. These islets are connected by a network of tidal canals, so that the city seems to float atop the sea. To approach Nan Madol today is to feel the uncanny weight of history. The place is quiet, haunted by the cry of seabirds and the slap of water against stone. There are no crowds, no guards, no tourist centers, only the ruins, half-submerged mosques, waiting. Archaeologists believe construction began as early as the 8th or 9th century CE, reaching its peak around the 12th century under the Solar dynasty, a line of rulers who governed Pohnpei for centuries. These rulers centralized political and spiritual power, establishing Nan Madol as their royal and ceremonial seat. The city became the hub of power for the entire island, where rituals, feasts, and political decisions unfolded in carefully planned courtyards. But the mystery begins with the very stones themselves. The basalt used to build Nan Madol is not just any stone. It is columnar basalt, a volcanic formation that naturally breaks into hexagonal shapes, like giant stone pencils. Some of these columns weigh several tons, and yet thousands of them were quarried, transported, and stacked to form walls that still rise over 6 meters high. The construction resembles a giant log cabin made of stone, with the basalt laid in alternating horizontal layers interlocked at the corners. How these stones were moved remains one of the central enigmas. There is no evidence of wheeled transport, no beasts of burden, and no record of large-scale sledges or rollers. Some columns may have been floated on rafts across the lagoon, but others appear to have come from quarries several kilometers inland, meaning they had to be dragged over rugged terrain before reaching the water. The logistical effort would have required a well-organized labor force, perhaps thousands of workers, and an advanced understanding of engineering and buoyancy. Oral traditions on Pohnpei offer a different explanation. They speak of two brothers, Alosapa and Alosaha, who came from the mythical land of Kanamwiz. These brothers are said to have been sorcerers, capable of levitating the basalt columns into place using chants and spells. The legends claim that the city was built in a matter of weeks, not decades, through supernatural means. These stories, passed down through generations, lend Nan Madol an aura of mythic weight, suggesting that the city's very existence is inseparable from the island's cosmology. The layout of Nan Madol seems deliberate, ceremonial, and symbolic. Certain islets were reserved for chiefs, others for priests, and still others for burial. The most imposing structure is Nandawas, the royal mortuary complex, whose walls enclose a central tomb where the Sodala rulers were buried. Entering Nandawas even today feels like stepping into a space set apart from ordinary life. The walls form a perfect square, their basalt faces glistening with sea spray, the silence thick as though waiting for ritual. Curiously, there is little evidence that Nan Madol ever supported a large population. There are no wells, no springs within the city, meaning fresh water would have had to be ferried in daily. Food too had to be brought from the surrounding island. This suggests that Nan Madol was not a bustling metropolis but a ceremonial and political center, a place where the elite gathered for rites and governance, while the common people lived elsewhere. And then, at some point in the 16th or 17th century, the city was abandoned. The Sodala dynasty collapsed, replaced by the non-Warki system of decentralized chiefdoms. Some oral histories claim that the last Sodala ruler grew tyrannical, angering the gods, who sent a foreign conqueror named Isokelikal to overthrow him. After the fall of the dynasty, Nan Madol seems to have been left to the sea. The jungle crept back in, the tides filled the canals, and the city fell silent. European explorers first recorded Nan Madol in the early 19th century. They called it the Venice of the Pacific for its watery streets and canal layout. But unlike Venice, Nan Madol is devoid of color or human bustle. Its dark basalt walls stand stark against the green and blue of the lagoon, a ghostly reminder of a vanished world. Even today, local people approach the site with reverence and caution. Some call it a place of spirits, a haunted city where misfortune may befall those who linger too long. Modern archaeologists have mapped and measured the site, piecing together its phases of construction, but many questions remain unanswered. How long did it take to build? How were the stones transported and stacked so precisely? What was the full scope of its religious and political life? And why was it finally deserted, its stones left to the tide? Nan Madol invites comparison with other megalithic sites across the world, from the stone circles of Europe to the stepped pyramids of Mesoamerica. Each of these places seems to encode a memory of power, of cosmology, of rulers who sought to inscribe their vision into stone. And like those other places, Nan Madol resists full explanation. Its stones keep their secrets, as the tide rises in the lagoon and the light begins to fade. Nan Madol takes on an otherworldly beauty. The canals darken, reflecting the sky like polished obsidian, while the walls seem to rise higher in the gathering dusk. The city becomes not just a ruin, but a threshold, a place where the present brushes against the past, and where history itself feels suspended. Some who visit speak of a stillness that is almost alive, as though the city is waiting for something or remembering something long forgotten. Perhaps it is waiting for us to listen more closely, to hear the stories the stones are still trying to tell. And so we leave Nan Madol as we found it, quiet, brooding, and eternal. Its basalt walls holding fast against the sea, its mystery still intact. Chapter 4. The Sphinx of Gizeh rises from the sands like a dream-made stone, a body of a lion, stretched across the desert plateau, crowned with the face of a man that gazes eternally toward the east, toward the horizon where the sun is born. The Great Sphinx of Gizeh is both a monument and a riddle. For millennia it has endured storms, invasions, and the slow erosion of time, yet its silence has never broken. It remains what it has always been, an enigma carved in limestone, watching over the pyramids like an ancient sentinel. Mainstream Egyptology holds that the Sphinx was built during the reign of Pharaoh Khufu, around 2500 BCE. This attribution is based largely on circumstantial evidence. The proximity of the monument to Khufu's pyramid complex, the alignment of causeways, and fragments of statues found in the temple at its base. Yet the Sphinx itself bears no inscription naming its builder. No text from the Old Kingdom claims its creation. Its true origin is suspended in uncertainty, balanced between stone and silence. The Sphinx is immense, carved directly from the limestone bedrock of the plateau. It measures over 240 feet in length and more than 66 feet in height. Its paws stretch forward like the gates of a temple, while its flanks ripple with the musculature of a lion. The face, worn, battered, and recarved across centuries, retains an aura of dignity even in ruin. Once, it is thought, the entire body was painted in vivid colors, its head adorned with the royal Nemes headdress, its eyes lined in pigment that caught the blazing sun. What survives today is but the shadow of a figure that must once have been overwhelming in its vitality. Yet the Sphinx is not merely a work of art. Its mystery lies in the stone itself. In the 1990s, a team led by geologist Robert Schoch of Boston University observed the erosion patterns along its body and the surrounding enclosure. The deep, vertical weathering did not resemble the wind-driven erosion typical of the desert. Instead, it bore the hallmarks of water-heavy, sustained rainfall pouring down the limestone walls. But Egypt has not seen such rain since long before the rise of dynastic civilization. If the Sphinx was shaped by water, its origins might stretch back to a prehistoric era, perhaps to 7000 or even 9000 BC, when the Sahara was a land of rivers and grasslands. This theory unsettles the timeline of history, for if the Sphinx predates Khufu, who carved it, what culture possessed the will and skill to create such a monument thousands of years before the known pharaohs rose to power? The possibility suggests not just an older Egypt, but a forgotten chapter of human civilization. The head itself only deepens the riddle. Many scholars have noted that the scale of the head is disproportionate to the massive body. Some argue it was recarved in antiquity, its original features lost to time. Could the Sphinx have once borne the face of a lion, aligning its identity with its body? Or perhaps it carried the visage of a god erased by later rulers. Others propose that the current human face may have been carved smaller to repair a damaged original. What was once a seamless unity of form has become an unresolved puzzle, a monument of two histories layered upon one another. Legends surrounding the Sphinx reach deep into Egypt's past. The dream stele, placed between its paws by Pharaoh Thutmose IV around 1400 BCE, tells of a prince who fell asleep in the shadow of the Colossus. In his dream, the Sphinx spoke to him, promising kingship if he cleared away the sands that had buried it up to its neck. When Thutmose became king, he fulfilled the command, and in gratitude, recorded the divine vision. In this tale, the Sphinx appears not merely as stone but as an oracle, a voice between worlds, whispering destiny to those who would listen. Throughout history, the sands have sought to reclaim the Sphinx. Repeatedly, it has been buried to its shoulders, its body entombed while only its head emerged from the desert like an island. Pharaohs, priests, and modern archaeologists alike have dug it free, only for the dunes to rise again. This cycle of burial and rebirth seems fitting for a monument tied so closely to the mysteries of death, resurrection, and the sun's eternal return. Myth stretches beyond Egypt as well. Some have linked the Sphinx to the constellation of Leo, suggesting that its lion body aligned with the stars around 10,500 BCE, when the rising of Orion's belt and Leo heralded a celestial epoch. Others whisper of hidden chambers beneath its paws, gateways to forgotten libraries that preserve the wisdom of a lost civilization. In the 1970s and 80s, remote sensing studies conducted near the monument suggested anomalies, voids, or cavities beneath the bedrock. Whether natural fissures or human-made chambers, their presence fuels speculation that the Sphinx guards not just the plateau, but the secrets of an age-long vanished. Archaeologists, working within conventional history, dismiss these ideas as speculation, attributing the weathering to other forces and the star alignments to coincidence. Yet the questions persist, because the Sphinx itself leaves no answers. Its silence is the very heart of its power. There is also the riddle of purpose. Was the Sphinx meant as a guardian, watching over the necropolis of the pharaohs? Was it an image of the king himself, fusing human intelligence with leonine strength? Or did it embody a more ancient archetype, the eternal fusion of man and beast that appears across cultures, from Mesopotamian Lamassu to the lion-headed goddess Sekhmet? In its hybrid form, the Sphinx may be more than a monument to one ruler. It may be the stone expression of a universal symbol, the union of Earth's animal power with the consciousness of man in the early modern era. Travelers from Europe marveled at the Sphinx, though most of its body lay hidden beneath the sand. Napoleon's scholars mapped and drew it, recording its proportions. In 1817, Giovanni Battista Caviglia led one of the first modern excavations, clearing the sands from its pores. Since then, countless restorations have been attempted, though the fragile limestone erodes with each century. Some of the most dramatic damage occurred far earlier. Accounts from Arab historians of the 14th century describe how the Sphinx's nose was deliberately destroyed, an act of iconoclasm meant to silence its visage. Whether struck by cannon fire, chisels, or time itself, the absent nose has become as iconic as the monument itself, a visible scar of human hands upon ageless stone. Today, the Sphinx endures as both a national symbol and an unsolved enigma. Millions of visitors stand before it, dwarfed by its gaze, sensing the weight of ages pressing down. Beneath the desert sun, the limestone glows with shifting shades, as though the colossus were alive, breathing with the heat of the day and the cool of the night. The question remains, who carved this being of stone, and for what purpose? Somewhere between geology and mythology, between archaeology and memory, the Sphinx holds its truth. It has seen the rise and fall of dynasties, the flooding of the Nile, the march of armies across its plateau. It has endured while empires crumbled, and still it watches the horizon. Patient, silent, eternal. To stand before the Sphinx is to feel time collapse. The modern world fades, and the ancient desert whispers. You find yourself staring into a face that has seen more than human memory can hold, a face that may not be the original, but still carries the weight of a mystery older than Egypt itself. And so the Sphinx remains, poised between lion and man, between myth and history, guardian, oracle, or relic of a civilization forgotten. It does not answer. It only watches unblinking, as the sun rises once more in the east. Chapter 5. The Pyramids of Caral. The arid skies of Peru's Soup Valley, where the coastal desert meets the Andean foothills, lies a city older than almost any in the Americas. Its pyramids rise not as sharp peaks like those of Egypt, but as flat-topped platforms of stone and earth, eroded and sun-bleached by 5,000 years of wind. This is Caral, the cradle of one of the most enigmatic civilizations ever discovered, and a place that quietly rewrote the story of human beginnings in the Americas. Caral first came to the world's with attention in the 1990s when archaeologist Ruth Shady Solis led a team to investigate the strange mounds scattered across the Soup Valley. What they uncovered was not a scattering of random ruins, but a city plan: pyramids, sunken circular plazas, wide avenues, and residential sectors, all dating back to around 2600 BCE. This made Caral roughly contemporaneous with the pyramids of Giza, and centuries older than the better-known civilizations of the Andes, such as the Mocha and Nazca or Inca. Its discovery pushed back the timeline of complex society in the Americas by over 1,000 years. The city was not a single pyramid, but a network of monumental structures arranged with apparent intention. The largest, known as the Pyramid Maya, covers nearly 2 hectares and rises almost 30 feet high. Its flat summit may have served as a platform for rituals, feasting, or astronomical observation. At its base lies a sunken circular plaza, a feature that repeats throughout Caral as though the builders wanted to create stages for gathering. For looking both inward and upward, what makes Caral remarkable is not only its age but the nature of its society. Unlike many early cities, Caral shows no evidence of fortifications, weapons, or warfare. There are no depictions of conquest carved in stone, no skeletal remains bearing signs of violent death. Instead, the artifacts uncovered speak of trade, music, and ceremony. Excavations revealed flutes made from the wing bones of condors and pelicans, as well as rattles and drums, suggesting that music was woven into the life of the city. Traders brought in exotic goods: spondylus shells from the coast, obsidian from the highlands, cotton for weaving, and fishing nets. Some archaeologists believe that Caral was a pilgrimage center, a place where neighboring communities gathered for rituals and exchanges, perhaps binding together a region through shared cosmology rather than conquest. Its plazas could hold hundreds, even thousands of people. Fires were lit in ceremonial pits, offerings were buried in layers of construction fill, and alignments seemed to mark solstices and lunar events. This was a city that looked to the stars. The builders of Caral left no written language, no stone stele with kings or dates. Their story must be pieced together from architecture, artifacts, and the bones of those who lived there. Even these bones tell a quiet story. They show signs of long lives, of children and elders, of a population that seems to have thrived for centuries before fading. Why Caral was eventually abandoned remains one of its great mysteries. Evidence suggests that climate played a role. The Soup Valley is subject to cycles of drought and flooding, driven by El Niño events. Around 1800 BCE, major shifts may have disrupted agriculture, forcing the population to disperse. Caral's pyramids were not toppled by invaders, but simply left to the desert, its plazas filling with sand, its staircases buried by time. Some scholars see Caral as proof that the first cities did not have to be centers of violence. Here was a society that built monuments not as fortresses but as temples, and that may have organized its life around ceremony rather than conquest. If so, Caral stands as a reminder that civilization's earliest impulse may have been toward gathering, music, and cosmic order, toward harmony rather than war. Standing in Caral today, The desert wind whistles through the plazas, carrying with it the scent of the distant Pacific. The stones are quiet, the flutes no longer play, yet there is a sense that this place was built for eternity. The pyramids align with the horizon as though they are still watching the sun, still counting the turning of the seasons. Perhaps Caral has never truly been abandoned, perhaps it waits, as so many ancient cities do, for us to learn how to listen. Chapter 6. The Baghdad Battery and the Dusty Landscape near Baghdad. In the 1930s, archaeologists uncovered an object that should not exist. Buried in the ruins of Kujat Rabu, a small village overlooking the Tigris, was a clay jar no larger than a man's hand. At first glance, it seemed ordinary, a simple vessel from antiquity. Yet inside lay something remarkable, a copper cylinder and an iron rod, carefully fitted together. This unassuming artifact would soon be known to the world as the Baghdad Battery. The jar itself dates to around 2,000 years ago, within the Parthian or early Sassanid period, roughly the 1st centuries BCE or CE. The Parthians were not renowned for technological experimentation. They were horsemen and empire builders, heirs to the traditions of Persia and Mesopotamia. Yet here, in the soil of their realm, was an object whose form seemed startlingly out of place. When examined closely, the jar revealed construction that resembled the design of a simple galvanic cell, what we today would call a battery. Its dimensions are modest, about 6 inches tall, sealed with bitumen. The copper cylinder fits snugly inside the clay jar, while the iron rod rests within the copper, isolated by asphalt-like material. To modern eyes, this arrangement is unmistakable. When filled with an acidic liquid, such as vinegar or wine, the device could generate a small electric charge, not enough to power lights or machines, but enough to shock the skin or deposit a faint layer of metal onto another surface. This discovery raises a question that reverberates across centuries. Did the ancients know of electricity long before it was discovered in the modern age? The hypothesis first gained attention through Wilhelm King, an Austrian archaeologist working with the Baghdad Museum in the 1930s. King proposed that the jar was, in fact, an ancient battery perhaps used for electroplating objects with gold or silver. His idea spread rapidly, capturing the imagination of scholars and the public alike. Here was a suggestion that the people of Mesopotamia had tapped into forces of nature we associate with the 18th and 19th centuries. Experiments followed. In the 1970s, researchers built replicas of the Baghdad Battery, filling them with vinegar, grape juice, or lemon juice. The devices produced voltages ranging from half a volt to nearly 2 volts. Multiple jars linked together could, in theory, create a higher output. These results seemed to support King's theory, but they also deepened the mystery. For what purpose would such a current have been used? The most widely suggested answer is electroplating, the process of coating one metal with another. If artisans of the Parthian or Sassanid world had discovered electrochemistry, they could have gilded small objects with surprising efficiency. Yet, despite centuries of excavations across Mesopotamia, confirmed examples of electroplated artifacts from this period have been identified. Some objects once claimed as plated may have been treated by other means, such as mechanical gilding or mercury amalgam, both of which were known in antiquity. If not plating, then perhaps ritual. The device could deliver a mild electric shock, enough to startle or even inspire. Imagine a priest in a dimly lit temple, touching a supplicant with a charged rod. The sensation might have seemed divine, the touch of a god's power flowing through human hands. Electricity, in such a context, would not have been understood as science, but as mystery. Others suggest a more mundane possibility, that the jar was simply a storage vessel, perhaps for scrolls or sacred texts. The copper and iron might have been used for sealing or as a structural reinforcement, with no intended electrical function at all. This interpretation strips away the sense of wonder, reducing the object to coincidence. And yet, the careful design, the cylinder within the cylinder, the insulation of bitumen continues. To resist easy dismissal, the Baghdad Battery stands at the intersection of two worlds, archaeology and imagination. To the cautious scholar, it is an ambiguous artifact, its purpose unknowable. To those who sense hidden histories beneath the surface of time, it is a tantalizing clue, a whisper of forgotten science. Was it an isolated curiosity, a craftsperson's experiment never fully developed, or was it part of a wider tradition of knowledge, scattered and lost through the centuries? There are echoes, faint and scattered, of other ancient encounters with electricity. In the temples of Egypt, reliefs have been interpreted controversially as depictions of bulb-like devices. In the records of the Greeks, men like Thales of Miletus wrote of the strange attraction of amber rubbed with fur, a phenomenon we now recognize as static electricity. In Mesopotamia itself, lightning was long associated with the gods, a force that struck from heaven with terrifying precision. Perhaps the Baghdad Battery represents a bridge between observation and control, humanity's first attempt to harness the spark of the divine today. The original artifact resides in the National Museum of Iraq. Its story, however, is fractured. During the chaos of the 2003 invasion, the museum was looted, and for a time the battery was thought lost, perhaps destroyed or scattered into private hands. Reports later suggested it had survived, though its current state remains uncertain. In this uncertainty, the mystery deepens further, as though the object itself resists being fully known, drifting in and out of history like a shadow. The Baghdad Battery reminds us that the ancient world may have held knowledge that does not fit neatly into our time. Whether it was truly a source of power, or simply an enigmatic container, it sparks a question as enduring as electricity itself. How much have we forgotten, and how many discoveries lie buried, misinterpreted, or erased by the long passage of time? To hold such a small vessel in the palm of one's hand, and to imagine it glowing with unseen currents 2,000 years ago, is to glimpse a world where the boundaries between science and ritual were blurred, where technology and magic were not opposed, but intertwined. The clay jar remains silent. Its copper and iron no longer hum with potential, but in its stillness, it continues to challenge us. It invites us to ask whether the march of human knowledge has always been linear, or whether, at moments, flashes of brilliance illuminated the ancient world, only to be forgotten and buried in the dust. And so the Baghdad Battery endures as both artifact and question, a small vessel from the ruins of Mesopotamia, carrying within it the possibility of a story far larger than itself, a story of light in an age we call dark, of power hidden in the clay of the earth, waiting to be rediscovered. Chapter 7. Puma Punku and Teotihuacan, nearly 13,000 feet above sea level, where the air is thin and the Andes seem to scrape the sky, lies one of the most enigmatic archaeological sites in the world. The Altiplano of Bolivia is a vast, windswept plateau, a place where the earth feels close to the heavens. Here, scattered across the plain, stand the ruins of Tiwanaku and its outlying complex, Puma Punku, a place whose stones have ignited decades of fascination, speculation, and debate. Approaching Puma Punku is like stepping into a puzzle frozen in time. Enormous andesite and red sandstone blocks lie strewn across the site, some weighing more than 100 tons. They are cut into geometric shapes with startling precision, flat faces, crisp right angles, and intricate interlocking designs. The most famous are the H-shaped blocks, each seemingly identical, as if they were produced in a workshop with templates or jigs. These blocks fit together like pieces of a three-dimensional jigsaw, creating joints so tight that a sheet of paper cannot pass between them. Many bare-drilled holes, smooth as if bored by a high-speed tool, some arranged in perfect rows. Archaeologists date Puma Punku to around 500 to 600 CE, placing it within the Tiwanaku culture that flourished on the Altiplano long before the rise of the Inca Empire. Tiwanaku was a ceremonial and political center, home to grand plazas, sunken temples, and monolithic gateways. Its influence stretched across the southern Andes, reaching into what is now Peru, Chile, and Argentina. This was not a minor village but a capital of a civilization, and Puma Punku may have been one of its most sacred precincts. Yet the engineering of Puma Punku remains puzzling. Andesite is an exceptionally hard volcanic rock, with a Mohs hardness of around 7, nearly as hard as quartz. Shaping it with simple stone hammers would have been laborious. The perfect symmetry of the H-blocks, the precision of their 90-degree angles, and the uniformity of their cuts have led some to argue that the builders possessed tools or techniques beyond what we typically ascribe to pre-Columbian cultures. Were copper chisels and stone pounders enough to achieve this, or was some other technology perhaps now lost employed? Mainstream archaeologists generally hold that these feats were accomplished with patient labor and ingenious methods, pounding stones, sand abrasion, and wooden or red drills tipped with harder materials. Experimental archaeology has shown that such methods can indeed produce straight cuts and even drill holes, though rarely with the consistency seen at Puma Punku. Others argue that we are underestimating the organizational power of the Tiwanaku state, which could have mobilized large workforces and invested decades in constructing a site of such importance. The layout of Puma Punku adds another layer of mystery. Its blocks appear to have once formed stepped platforms, doorways, and precision-fit walls, suggesting a monumental complex that may have symbolized a cosmological order. The entire site is aligned to the cardinal directions with remarkable accuracy. Some researchers have proposed that Puma Punku functioned as a ritual gateway. Its name, meaning door of the Puma, hints at a liminal space, perhaps connecting the earthly world to the realm of spirits or ancestors nearby. At the heart of Tiwanaku proper stands the iconic Gateway of the Sun. Carved from a single massive slab of andesite, it is decorated with intricate reliefs, including the image of the staff god, a central deity in Andean iconography, surrounded by winged attendants. The lintel also features a series of rectangular motifs that many researchers believe represent a solar calendar, possibly encoding solstices, equinoxes, or a ritual year of 260 days. Yet the full meaning of this stone gateway remains elusive. Was it an astronomical marker, a ritual threshold, or a depiction of a cosmic narrative now lost to us? Excavations at Tiwanaku reveal that it was not only a ceremonial center but a place of pilgrimage. Sunken quartz suggests that thousands gathered here for rites tied to agriculture, water, and celestial cycles. Offerings of llama bones, ceramic vessels, and carved figurines have been found buried in dedication layers, hinting at a complex ritual life. This was a culture that watched the sky closely, aligning its architecture with the movements of the sun, moon, and stars. When Tiwanaku collapsed around 1000 CE, Puma Punku was abandoned. The great stones fell, whether through earthquakes, deliberate dismantling, or the slow work of centuries of weather. The site lay in ruins when the Inca arrived, and even they regarded it with reverence, incorporating its legacy into their own cosmology. Spanish chroniclers in the 16th century wrote that the ruins were the work of the Viracocha, divine creators who fashioned the first humans from stone before disappearing across the sea. Such myths only deepened the air of mystery that clings to the site. Today, Puma Punku stands as both a marvel and a challenge. Its blocks invite close inspection, every groove, every drilled hole, every polished surface a question whispered across the ages. Some see in them evidence of a forgotten technology, perhaps from a culture far older than Tiwanaku itself. Others see the pinnacle of Andean proof that ancient builders could achieve wonders with skill, patience, and spiritual purpose. Standing among the scattered stones, the wind rushing across the Altiplano, one feels the tension between these two interpretations. Was this a temple to the stars, a gathering place for rituals of cosmic renewal, or does Puma Punku hold a deeper story, one that reaches beyond the known timeline of human civilization? The questions linger in the thin air unanswered, waiting for the next seeker to kneel down and trace the edge of a perfectly cut block to feel its smoothness, its angles, and its silence. The gateway of the sun still frames the horizon, as though marking a passage not only of seasons but of ages. As the sun sets behind the mountains, casting long shadows across the stones, it is easy to imagine that Tiwanaku and Puma Punku are not ruins at all, but sleeping monuments, guardians of a knowledge we have not yet learned how to read. Chapter 8. The Dead Sea Scrolls. In the spring of 1947, in the barren cliffs near the Dead Sea, a shepherd searching for a stray goat stumbled upon a cave. Inside, sealed in clay jars, lay brittle scrolls wrapped in linen. At first they seemed of little value, scraps of parchment, fragments of text, yet this accidental discovery would soon be recognized as one of the greatest archaeological revelations of the 20th century. These were the Dead Sea Scrolls, writings that had lain hidden for nearly 2,000 years. Preserved in the silence of the desert, the caves of Qumran would yield more than 900 manuscripts, dating from the 3rd century BCE to the 1st century CE. They are among the oldest surviving copies of biblical texts, predating the earliest known Hebrew manuscripts by nearly 1,000 years. Alongside familiar scriptures, fragments of Genesis, Isaiah, Psalms were writings never before seen, hymns, apocalyptic visions, rules for communal living, and commentaries that hinted at the turmoil of a world on the edge of transformation. The scrolls are written in Hebrew, Aramaic, and Greek languages that echo with the voices of ancient Judea. Their state of preservation varies widely. Some survive as nearly complete scrolls, while others are reduced to tiny shards of parchment, letters fading into dust. Pieced together painstakingly over decades, they form a mosaic of belief, a window into the diversity of thought and expectation that marked the final centuries before the destruction of the Second Temple in 70 CE. Who were the people who placed these texts in the caves, sealing them in jars as if for safekeeping? Most scholars associate them with the Est, a Jewish sect described by ancient writers such as Josephus and Pliny the Elder. The Essenes were said to live in strict communities, devoted to purity, ritual bathing, and the anticipation of a coming Messiah. The settlement at Qumran, with its aqueducts, ritual baths, and communal dining halls, matches these descriptions. It seems likely that the scrolls reflect their library, hidden in haste as Roman legions advanced. Yet certainty eludes us. Some argue the scrolls may not have belonged exclusively to the Qumran sect, but represent a broader collection gathered from across Judea. Others suggest they were the remnants of multiple groups, each with its own interpretations of law, prophecy, and redemption. The scrolls themselves do not name their authors. They remain voices without faces, sealed in silence for centuries. Among the most remarkable discoveries are the biblical manuscripts themselves. The great Isaiah scroll, found almost entirely intact, mirrors the text known from later traditions with astonishing accuracy. This confirms the remarkable fidelity of Jewish scribes in transmitting sacred texts across generations. Yet alongside this continuity are variations, alternate wordings, passages reordered or expanded that remind us the biblical canon was still fluid in this period, its boundaries not yet fixed. Beyond the biblical texts are writings that speak with an urgent apocalyptic tone. The War Scroll envisions a cosmic conflict between the sons of light and the sons of darkness, a battle that would culminate in divine victory. The Community Rule describes a strict code of conduct, binding members to obedience and purity. Hymns of thanksgiving and lamentation reveal a community convinced that it lived at the threshold of history, awaiting deliverance in a world of corruption. Some scrolls speak of messianic expectation in striking terms. They envision not one Messiah, but two, a priestly and a royal figure who would lead Israel into renewal. Others describe a teacher of righteousness, a leader who suffered opposition and persecution, yet whose words were revered as truth. The echoes of these ideas resonate with the emergence of early Christianity, raising questions about the shared landscape of belief in this period. The discovery of the scrolls reshaped our understanding of Judaism in the time of Jesus and the roots of Christianity itself. Before Qumran, our knowledge of this era came primarily from later rabbinic texts and the writings of outsiders like Josephus. The scrolls, however, reveal voices from within the culture, voices alive with expectation, division, and fervent hope. They show that Judaism was not monolithic, but diverse, a tapestry of sects and visions, from Pharisees to Sadducees, Essenes to Zealots, each contending with the destiny of their people. Yet the scrolls also opened the door to controversy. For decades, access to them was tightly controlled. A small team of scholars held the fragments, and many texts remained unpublished well into the late 20th century. This secrecy fueled suspicion. Some speculated that suppressed scrolls contained revelations that would undermine religious orthodoxy, hidden gospels, forbidden doctrines, or knowledge that challenged the foundations of Christianity and Judaism. Though most of the unpublished fragments were eventually released, and their contents largely aligned with known themes, the long delay left a lingering aura of mystery, a sense that perhaps not everything was revealed. The physical fragments themselves bear witness to fragility and loss. Stored for centuries in jars, they survived against all odds. Yet many are faded beyond recovery. New technologies, infrared photography, multispectral imaging, and digital reconstruction have brought once invisible letters to light. These advances reveal not only texts but fingerprints of scribes, tiny details of ink and parchment that connect us to the hands that once wrote them under desert light. And still questions remain. Were the Essenes merely a small sect recording their peculiar beliefs, or were they custodians of a larger, hidden tradition? Did their apocalyptic visions reflect only their own struggles, or a broader current of expectation flowing through Judea at the time? And why, above all, did they hide their scrolls in caves, sealed away as if for a future they would never see? The desert, too, seems complicit in their preservation. The Dead Sea's salt air and the arid climate created a vault where parchment could endure. It is as if the landscape itself conspired to protect the words until the modern world was ready to receive them. When the shepherd cast his stone into the cave and heard the crack of pottery, it was not merely jars that broke, but the silence of centuries today. The Dead Sea Scrolls are preserved in the Shrine of the Book in Jerusalem, their fragments displayed under dim light to protect them from decay. Visitors gaze at the fragile parchments, aware that they are looking at voices from a vanished world, words written in ink that still whispers across the millennia. And yet, even now, the scrolls resist full comprehension. They are not a single story, but a chorus of voices, prophetic, political, mystical. They invite us to imagine a desert community waiting for salvation, its members convinced they stood at the edge of an ending and a beginning. They invite us to reflect on the way knowledge survives, sometimes buried, sometimes suppressed, sometimes breaking into the light when least expected. The caves of Qumran remain, silent hollows in the limestone cliffs, their shadows stretching across the desert floor. Within them, jars once guarded a treasure not of gold or silver, but of words, fragile, fragmentary, incomplete yet powerful enough to reshape history. And so the Dead Sea Scrolls continue to speak not with certainty, but with questions. Questions about origins, about faith, about hidden traditions that may never be fully revealed. They are not an answer, but an opening a door into a world of prophecy, of conflict, of longing, a world that still waits, in the silence of the desert, for its final revelation. Chapter 9. The Piri Reis Map in the early 20th century. An unassuming discovery in the archives of Istanbul would send ripples through the world of cartography and historical inquiry. In 1929, scholars cataloging the vast collections of the Topkapi Palace stumbled upon a fragment of a world map, carefully drawn on gazelle skin. The map was signed by Ahmed Muhyiddin Piri, better known as Piri Reis, a celebrated admiral and cartographer of the Ottoman Navy. What made this map extraordinary was not merely its survival but its content. Coastlines drawn with a degree of accuracy that seemed centuries ahead of its time. The Piri Reis map dates to 1513, only 21 years after Columbus first sailed westward across the Atlantic. Yet it shows not just the familiar coastlines of Europe and Africa, but the entire eastern coast of South America with remarkable precision. The contours of the continent match so closely to modern maps that researchers were left astonished. Even more enigmatic is the southernmost section of the map, a landmass some claim resembles Antarctica, drawn not with its modern icy outline but as if free of ice, showing an exposed coastline that would have been visible only thousands of years ago. Piri Reis himself left a set of notes on the map's margins. In them he claimed that his work was a synthesis of about 20 charts and maps, some from Arab geographers, some from Portuguese explorers, and crucially, some from sources dating back to the time of Alexander the Great. This statement, if taken literally, implies that he had access to knowledge far older than the Age of Discovery. Maps that preserved a geographical memory from antiquity or perhaps even prehistory cartographers have long debated the accuracy and implications of the map. Mainstream scholars argue that the supposed Antarctica might instead represent an exaggerated or speculative southern extension of South America, a feature often included on early maps to balance the globe's landmass. Others suggest that sailors might have glimpsed portions of the Antarctic peninsula during rare warm periods, though this remains unproven. The idea that the map shows Antarctica ice-free is tantalizing but controversial, for the last time its coasts were exposed would have been at least 6,000 years ago, long before any known seafaring civilization could have charted them. The precision of South America's coastline also raises questions. Many European maps from the early 16th century still showed the Americas as disjointed landmasses, sometimes fragmented or poorly proportioned. Piri Reis, however, captured the shape of Brazil with striking fidelity and even indicated features like rivers and mountain ranges. His sources, therefore, must have included charts drawn from extensive reconnaissance, perhaps by Portuguese explorers, perhaps by sailors whose journeys were never officially recorded. Some alternative historians see in the Piri Reis map a fragmentary survival of a global knowledge system, a memory of a time when mariners had already charted much of the world. They point to legends of Atlantis, tales of seafaring Phoenicians, or even the possibility of civilizations lost to rising seas at the end of the last ice age. Could these be the shadowy cartographers whose work eventually filtered down to Piri Reis? Even setting aside such theories, the map remains a window into a moment of profound transition in human history, when the medieval world gave way to the global age. Piri Reis worked at a time when the Ottoman Empire was a maritime power, its fleets ranging across the Mediterranean and beyond. His map is a testament to a world rapidly expanding, where information was currency and charts were guarded like treasure. Indeed, Piri's map may have been intended not only as a navigational aid but as a statement of imperial knowledge, demonstrating that the Ottomans could claim mastery of the oceans. And yet, the more we study it, the more the Piri Reis map seems to pose questions rather than answer them. Where did those older charts originate? Were they truly relics of the Hellenistic age, or did they carry knowledge from even deeper antiquity, preserved through generations of copyists and sailors? Was there a lost tradition of global mapping, now mostly vanished, whose traces appear only in rare documents like this one? Today, the map is displayed under careful protection, its colors still vivid after 5 centuries. Visitors gaze at its elegant lines, its detailed inscriptions, its curious accuracy, and they feel, as so many have before, the pull of its mystery. The coastlines seem to whisper that the story of human exploration may be far older and more complex than we imagine. As the fragment of gazelle skin lies quiet under glass, the questions it raises remain alive. Who first mapped the edges of the world, and how much of that ancient knowledge has been lost to time, waiting for its next rediscovery? Chapter 10. Stonehenge on the rolling chalk plains of southern England. A circle of stones rises stark against the horizon. Stonehenge, even today, after millennia of wind, rain, and human curiosity, it still commands silence. Its monoliths stand like sentinels, weathered but unbroken, keeping their secrets beneath the vast English sky from a distance. Stonehenge can seem almost deceptively simple, a ring of upright stones, capped with lintels, encircling an open space. Yet step closer, and its strangeness becomes undeniable. These stones were raised nearly 5,000 years ago, in a time before writing in Britain, when the only tools were stone, wood, and bone. Some weigh as much as 40 tons, dragged across the landscape, shaped and placed with astonishing precision. Who could have built such a monument? And, more importantly, why? Archaeologists today see Stonehenge not as an isolated monument, but as the centerpiece of a much larger ceremonial landscape. The Salisbury Plain is scattered with earthworks, barrows, timber circles, and avenues, a prehistoric theater where life, death, and cosmos intersected. This was not simply a gathering of stones, but part of a network of ritual sites, aligned with the rhythms of nature and the mysteries of existence. The very stones themselves tell a story of extraordinary effort. The smaller bluestones, some weighing up to 4 tons each, were brought from the Preseli Hills of Wales over 150 miles away. Whether they were dragged over land on sledges and rollers, or floated along rivers and the coast on rafts, the feat is staggering. These stones were not chosen at random. The Preseli quarries were known for their unique, almost luminous rock, perhaps imbued with spiritual meaning. To bring them across mountains and waters suggests a deliberate act of devotion, a pilgrimage carved into the land itself. The larger sarsen stones, towering in the center, came from closer by, likely the Marlborough Downs, about 20 miles away. Even so, their transport and placement required ingenuity, cooperation, and vision. The builders shaped mortise and tenon joints into the stones, fitting lintels atop uprights with carpentry-like precision. It was not just engineering, it was architecture infused with meaning. Stonehenge's alignment has long fascinated researchers. On the morning of the summer solstice, the sun rises directly above the heel stone, casting its first rays through the heart of the monument. At the winter solstice, the setting sun sinks in the opposite direction, framed by the stones. This precise alignment suggests that Stonehenge was, at the very least, a calendar of stone, a way to track the turning of the year, the eternal cycle of light and darkness. For an agricultural society, such knowledge was survival itself. But was Stonehenge simply a calendar, or did its alignment serve deeper, more symbolic purposes? Many now believe it was not only about marking the solstices but about staging rituals of renewal. Thousands may have gathered here to celebrate the return of the sun, to honor the dead, to forge bonds of community and identity. Excavations reveal that Stonehenge was surrounded by burial mounds, cremated remains, and offerings. The bones unearthed here show signs of careful placement, suggesting that the monument was, at least in part, a place of ancestors. Perhaps those who gathered believed the circle of stones was a gateway between worlds where the living could commune with the dead, and the sun's eternal cycle mirrored the hope of rebirth. One intriguing clue comes from the discovery of the nearby Derinkuyu walls, a vast settlement just a few miles from Stonehenge. Here, archaeologists found evidence of feasting on a massive scale, pits filled with animal bones, pottery, and remnants of banquets. It seems that people traveled from across Britain to gather here, bringing livestock, food, and offerings. Stonehenge then may have been part of a grand ceremonial journey from the wooden circles at Derinkuyu representing the living, to the stone circle at Salisbury, the realm of the ancestors. Wood for life, stone for eternity. Yet another layer of mystery lies in the blue stones themselves. Some researchers have suggested they were believed to possess healing properties. Ancient legends from Wales speak of stones that cured ailments and drew pilgrims from afar. Could Stonehenge have been not only a temple of the sun, but a place of healing, a prehistoric sanctuary where the sick sought restoration, where rituals and medicine intertwined? Others look to the sky for answers. Stonehenge, they argue, may have functioned as an observatory, tracking lunar and stellar cycles in addition to the solar. Alignments with certain stars and eclipses have been proposed, though not all are accepted. Still, the sheer precision of its construction suggests knowledge of the heavens far beyond what we might expect of Neolithic farmers. Was this a temple of astronomy, where the cosmos itself was inscribed in stone? What we know for certain is that Stonehenge was not built all at once. It evolved over centuries, even millennia. The first circular earthwork dates to around 3100 BCE. The earliest stones were raised centuries later, and the Grand Sarsen Circle was not completed until about 2500 BCE. Each generation added, altered, or rebuilt, layering meaning upon meaning, as the site shifted with the tides of belief. And then, curiously, its central role declined. By around 1600 BCE, major construction ceased. The great monument remained, but its ceremonies may have faded, its purpose remembered only in fragments of oral tradition. The stones, however, stood firm long after their builders were gone, long after their culture had dissolved into memory. For later generations, Stonehenge became a riddle. Medieval chroniclers claimed it was built by giants or brought magically from Ireland by the wizard Merlin. Others linked it to Arthurian legend, imagining it as a burial place for fallen kings. In the modern age, it has been claimed as a druid temple, an alien landing site, a cosmic transmitter. Each theory says less about the stones themselves, and more about the human need to find meaning in mystery. What is undeniable is the aura of the place. Visit Stonehenge at dawn, when the mists hang low across the plain, and the stones emerge slowly, like phantoms of a forgotten age. Stand within the circle at midsummer, and feel the first light of the sun piercing its heart. These experiences carry a resonance that defies scientific explanation. The monument was built to impress, to inspire awe, and it still does. Recent technologies have deepened the mystery rather than solved it. Ground-penetrating radar and aerial surveys reveal that Stonehenge was only one part of a vast network of ceremonial sites. Long barrows, curses monuments stretching for miles, and timber circles now vanished but once equally imposing. It was a landscape designed for ritual, inscribed with meaning on a scale far larger than the stones alone. Stonehenge then resists a single answer. Was it a temple of the sun, a house of the dead, a place of healing, an observatory? Perhaps it was all of these, or none, its meaning shifting across centuries. To reduce it to one function may be to miss its essence. Like all great monuments, it carried layers of meaning, practical, symbolic, cosmic, interwoven in ways we can no longer fully recover. And so Stonehenge remains a riddle in stone, a calendar and a temple, a tomb and a gathering place. It embodies the ingenuity of its builders, the devotion of those who hauled stones across mountains and rivers, the vision of a people who carved eternity into their landscape 5,000 years later. It continues to stand silent, enduring, a monument not only to the past, but to the enduring human need to reach beyond the ordinary, to connect with the cosmos, to seek meaning in the cycles of time. Beneath the English sky, the stones wait, not for answers but for questions, for each new generation to look upon them and wonder. Chapter 11. The Antikythera mechanism. The Aegean Sea is deceptively calm. Its waters glimmer under the Mediterranean sun, yet they conceal the bones of countless ships, the lost cargo of entire civilizations. It was here, off the tiny island of Antikythera, that a group of sponge divers made a discovery that would transform our understanding of the ancient world. It was the spring of 1900 when those divers descended into the blue depths, searching not for treasure but for sponges to sell. At nearly 50 meters below the surface, one of them spotted something uncanny: bronze statues, amphorae, and shattered timbers scattered across the seafloor. The divers had stumbled upon the remains of a great shipwreck, one that had lain undisturbed for nearly 2,000 years. Over the next 2 years, the artifacts were painstakingly recovered and brought to the surface. Among them was a small, corroded lump of bronze and wood, so encrusted that it looked at first like nothing more than a worthless fragment. For decades, this object sat quietly in the National Archaeological Museum in Athens, almost forgotten. It was only in 1951, when physicist and historian Derek de Solla Price began to study it, that the true significance of the find came to light. As conservators carefully cleaned the incrustation, they revealed a network of bronze gears, axles, and dials, a mechanism of astonishing complexity. The corroded fragment was not a statue, nor a piece of ornament, but a machine today. We call it the Antikythera mechanism. Scholars have described it as the world's first known analog computer, a device capable of modeling the motions of the heavens. Its gears were cut with incredible precision, some with teeth no more than a millimeter long, meshing together in a compact, elegant arrangement. When a hand crank was turned, the mechanism could display the cycles of the moon and sun, predict eclipses, and chart the positions of the known planets. This was no mere astrolabe or sundial. The Antikythera mechanism represented a leap in mechanical ingenuity that would not be matched until the intricate clocks of medieval Europe, more than 1,000 years later. The device's construction suggests a deep understanding of both astronomy and engineering. Its creators were not merely artisans but scientists, capable of translating complex celestial cycles into a network of bronze cogs. Radiocarbon dating of the shipwrecks, timbers, and analysis of the inscriptions on the mechanism suggest it was built around 100 BCE, during the Hellenistic period. This was a time of extraordinary intellectual ferment. The libraries of Alexandria were still active, and scholars like Hipparchus of Nicaea were making groundbreaking observations of the heavens. Some researchers believe that Hipparchus himself may have contributed to the design, since the gearwork encodes the moon's motion with remarkable accuracy, including its slight oscillation, known as the lunar anomaly, a discovery often attributed to Hipparchus. But this raises deeper questions. If such technology existed in the Hellenistic world, why do we find no other examples? Was the Antikythera mechanism unique, a solitary masterpiece, or was it merely the sole survivor of a lost tradition of advanced mechanical devices, planetariums, or rays and calculators that have vanished without a trace? Ancient writers offered tantalizing hints. Cicero, writing in the 1st century BCE, described a device built by Archimedes that could display the motions of the planets. Others speak of spheres and celestial models housed in temples. Could the Antikythera mechanism be the descendant of such wonders? The shipwreck itself adds another layer of intrigue. The vessel appears to have been a massive Roman-era cargo ship, carrying luxury goods from the eastern Mediterranean toward Italy. Alongside the mechanism were found marble statues, glassware, and coins, the kind of treasures destined for the villas of the Roman elite. Was the mechanism intended for a wealthy patron, perhaps even a Roman general or statesman, eager to possess a device that brought the heavens within reach? Modern reconstructions of the mechanism, aided by advanced imaging techniques like X-ray tomography, have revealed even more of its secrets. Faint inscriptions on its panels describe its functions, reading almost like an instruction manual. They detail how to align the dials, how to read the cycles, how to anticipate eclipses. This was not merely an object of display but a practical tool, a working model of the cosmos meant to be used, turned, consulted. And yet, it is difficult to escape a sense of melancholy when contemplating the Antikythera mechanism. Its very survival seems accidental, a fluke of history. How many others were lost to the sea, to fire, to the slow erosion of time? What other marvels of ancient engineering might have existed, devices that could calculate, measure, or even automate, now gone, leaving only this one corroded witness to whisper of what once was? The Antikythera mechanism stands at a crossroads in history, between myth and science, between the age of gods and the age of machines. Its gears are silent now, but when they turned, they brought the heavens down to earth, allowing their owner to see the dance of the cosmos unfold in miniature. It reminds us that the ancients were not merely gazing at the stars with wonder, they were charting them, modeling them, mastering their patterns with astonishing skill. As the device rests today behind glass in Athens, its bronze teeth frozen in place, it still seems to hum with a quiet intelligence. Each gear hints at a story we have only just begun to decode. Perhaps somewhere, buried beneath centuries of sediment or lying in a forgotten shipwreck, there are others waiting to be found, more machines that could rewrite our understanding of what the ancient world was capable of. And as we stand before it, peering into its intricate core, one question lingers like the ticking of a clock. Was this the first of its kind, or the last survivor of a far older lineage of lost machines? Chapter 12. Derinkuyu Underground City. Beneath the rolling plains of Cappadocia in central Turkey, there lies a world within the earth, a place where sunlight never reaches, where silence hangs heavy, broken only by the whisper of air moving through stone. This is Derinkuyu, the deepest of Cappadocia's underground cities, a labyrinth carved into volcanic rock, descending more than 280 feet into the ground. To descend into Derinkuyu is to enter a hidden architecture of survival and mystery. Tunnels narrow as they twist downward, leading to vast chambers large enough to hold thousands. Archaeologists estimate that up to 20,000 people could have lived here at once, sustained by stables, kitchens, wine presses, wells, and storage rooms. Ventilation shafts, ingeniously cut through the rock, kept air circulating even in the deepest levels. Here, in the dim glow of oil lamps, entire communities could disappear into the earth and endure. Yet no one can say with certainty who first carved Derinkuyu or why. The soft volcanic tuff of Cappadocia makes excavation possible with even primitive tools. But the sheer scale of the city suggests generations of work. Some scholars date its origins to the early Byzantine period, around the 7th or 8th centuries CE, when Christian communities sought refuge from Arab raids. Others believe its foundations are far older, perhaps begun in the Hittite era, over 3,000 years ago. A few voices, standing outside the boundaries of mainstream archaeology, imagine something even earlier, a construction project, born in the haze of prehistory, its true architects long forgotten. The design itself provokes questions. Narrow passageways were deliberately built to force entrance into single file, with heavy circular stone doors ready to be rolled into place. These stones, weighing up to half a ton each, could be sealed from the inside, turning corridors into defensive choke points. Wells were dug deep enough to provide fresh water, protected from contamination above. Livestock pens revealed that animals were brought underground, ensuring survival even during long sieges. Derinkuyu was not a mere shelter. It was a fortress beneath the earth, but against whom? History tells us that the Cappadocian Plateau lay along the fault lines of empire. Hittites, Phrygians, Persians, Romans, Byzantines, Arabs, and Turks all passed through this land, leaving behind layers of conquest and resistance. In such a contested region, the need for refuge was real. Yet the depth of Derinkuyu, its complexity to hold tens of thousands, seems to exceed the scale of any passing raid. This was not simply hiding from an enemy army. It was a vision of entire societies living apart from the surface world. As one moves through the lower levels, the air cools, the darkness thickens, and the scale of human effort becomes overwhelming. There are chapels carved with apses and altars, suggesting not only survival but worship. There are schools, where voices once echoed in prayer and teaching. There are wine presses and oil mills, evidence of a culture that carried its rituals and sustenance below ground. The city is more than practical, it is ceremonial, as though its builders were preparing not just for war, but for continuity of life itself. One of the most remarkable features is the central ventilation shaft, a great column that descends like a spine through the city, drawing fresh air down and pulling stale air up. Its design is so precise that even today, air flows through Derinkuyu with ease. Some shafts also doubled as wells, their openings carefully hidden at the surface to prevent enemies from poisoning the water. To descend into these shafts is to feel the breath of a forgotten age still moving through stone. For local traditions, the underground cities of Cappadocia have always carried an air of myth. In Turkish folklore, they were said to be refuges for those fleeing fire from the sky, or invasions from forces unknown. Early travelers spoke of endless tunnels connecting Derinkuyu with other subterranean cities, stretching for miles beneath the plains. Indeed, modern surveys suggest that Derinkuyu is linked by passageways to Kaymakak and other nearby settlements, forming a vast, interconnected network. If so, the true extent of this hidden world may be far greater than we imagine. Speculation lingers around the purpose of such a monumental undertaking. Was Derinkuyu solely a fortress of refuge, or was it also a sacred space? Some researchers point to the astronomical alignments of certain shafts, wondering if they were designed to mark solstices or equinoxes, transforming parts of the underground city into ritual calendars. Others see echoes of initiation rites, where the descent into darkness symbolized death and rebirth, a journey into the underworld, before returning to the light above. Even more enigmatic are the questions of suppression and erasure. While Derinkuyu was rediscovered in 1963 when a local villager accidentally broke into a tunnel behind his home. The existence of these underground labyrinths was long known to locals, yet scarcely mentioned in wider historical records. Why were such vast cities absent from chronicles of empire and conquest? Was their silence a matter of oversight, or intentional forgetting? Walking through Derinkuyu today, with its smooth walls and long abandoned chambers, one feels the weight of those omissions. Human remains are scarce, inscriptions are few. The voices of its builders are gone, their stories untold. What remains is stone, shaped into a memory that resists easy interpretation. And yet, despite its silence, Derinkuyu stirs the imagination. To some, it is the ultimate refuge, a place where ancient peoples, pressed by fear of war or persecution, secured their survival in the most radical way possible. To others, it is evidence of a forgotten tradition, where architecture was as much spiritual as practical, a monument to cycles of descent and ascent, of concealment and revelation. Above ground, the plains of Cappadocia are famous for their strange rock formations, fairy chimneys and volcanic spires rising into the sky. Tourists drift overhead in hot air balloons, gazing at a dreamlike landscape. Yet beneath their feet, in shadowed corridors, lies a dream of another kind, one carved not into the heavens, but into the deep earth. Derinkuyu endures as both fact and enigma. Its stones can be measured, its chambers mapped, its shafts traced, but its meaning slips between categories, fortress or temple, necessity or mystery. Its true purpose remains unresolved. Each descent into its depths is a reminder that history often hides as much as it reveals, and that sometimes the greatest monuments are not those that rise into the sky, but those that vanish into the earth. Beneath the soil of Cappadocia, the silence of Derinkuyu waits. It is a silence heavy with breath once drawn, prayers once spoken, lives once lived far from the light of day. A silence that does not answer, but invites. And so the descent continues, step by step, deeper into the stone, deeper into the questions that linger, deeper into the memory of a world that may never fully return to the surface. Chapter 13. The Olmec Colossal Heads. They emerge from the earth like sentinels, silent and unblinking, their faces weathered by more than 3,000 years of sun, rain, and wind, scattered across the lush lowlands of the Gulf Coast of Mexico. The Olmec Colossal Heads are among the most enigmatic monuments of the ancient world. Each one is a masterpiece of monumental sculpture, human yet otherworldly, stern yet calm, their helmets and headdresses hinting at a ritual or martial significance that we still do not fully understand. Archaeologists first encountered these giants in the 19th century. The earliest discovery came in 1862 near Tres Zapotes, where a Mexican farmer unearthed an immense carved head while clearing his fields. News of the find reached scholars slowly, but when more were found in the early 20th century, it became clear that they were the work of a previously unrecognized civilization, the Olmec, now widely regarded as the mother culture of Mesoamerica. Dating techniques place these sculptures between roughly 1200 and 400 BC, making them among the oldest monumental works in the Americas. They predate the Great Pyramids of Teotihuacan, the ball courts of the Maya, and the mighty Aztec temples by centuries. Their creation required a society with skilled artisans, laborers, and a system of leadership capable of mobilizing the workforce necessary to quarry, transport, and carve basalt boulders, weighing as much as 20 to 40 tons each. The basalt itself was not local to many of the sites where the heads were found. The nearest quarries were often more than 50 miles away, requiring the stones to be dragged, rolled, or floated on rafts through rivers and swamps to their final locations. This feat of logistics speaks to a level of planning and cooperation impressive for any early civilization. It also suggests that the heads were objects of extraordinary importance, not mere decorative statues, but symbols with deep social, political, or spiritual significance. There are 17 known heads, each unique. Their faces are individualized, with distinct expressions, lip shapes, and eye forms. Some scholars interpret them as portraits of rulers, immortalized in stone to assert their power even after death. The helmets they wear have been compared to those used in the sacred Mesoamerican ballgame, perhaps linking the figures to ritual sport or ceremonial combat. Others propose they may represent warriors, or even deities in human guise. Curiously, the heads are always found detached from bodies, either because they were carved as heads alone, or because the rest of the bodies, if they existed, were deliberately left behind or destroyed. This absence deepens the sense of mystery. Were they meant to be free-standing guardians, positioned to watch over ceremonial centers, or could they have once been set in rows, forming a kind of council of ancestral spirits? Olmec art often carries themes of transformation, depicting figures that are half human, half jaguar, a motif that suggests shamanic ritual and the crossing of boundaries between worlds. The colossal heads may fit within this cosmological framework, their stony visages bridging the mortal and divine realms. To the people who carved them, these monuments may have embodied living power, not simply representing their subjects, but becoming them. The Olmec heartland was dotted with complex ceremonial sites like San Lorenzo, La Venta, and Tres Zapotes, where the heads are most commonly found. These centers featured plazas, pyramids, and altars arranged with a sense of cosmic order, aligning with cardinal directions and celestial events. The placement of the heads within these sites was not random. Many were oriented to face outward, as if guarding the precincts, their stares fixed on the horizon. Despite the mystery surrounding them, these heads are not isolated artifacts. They exist alongside other Olmec works, intricate jade figurines, massive stone altars or thrones, and finely carved cells. Together they reveal a culture with a sophisticated worldview and a deep interest in authority, ancestry, and ritual performance. The heads, however, stand apart in their scale and lifelike realism, as if the Olmec sought to leave behind eternal witnesses to their achievements. And yet, the Olmec themselves vanished. By around 400 BCE, their great centers were abandoned. Their society dispersed or absorbed into emerging regional cultures. The colossal heads remained half buried in earth, as if deliberately entombed. Some show signs of having been recarved or defaced, perhaps during moments of upheaval when old rulers were overthrown and new dynasties sought to erase their predecessors' memory. Even today, standing before one of these heads is an unsettling experience. They are massive, some taller than a person, others wider than a doorway, yet carved with delicate precision. Their lips pressed together in eternal silence. Their gaze seems to pass through the centuries, as though aware of the lives that come and go around them. For archaeologists, the heads are keys to a lost chapter of human history. They raise questions that remain unanswered. Who were the faces staring back at us? What ceremonies unfolded beneath their gaze? Were they witnesses to triumphs or tragedies that we can no longer reconstruct? Like so many ancient enigmas, the Olmec heads stand at the intersection of history and myth. They remind us that the first cities in the Americas were not merely clusters of huts but centers of power and meaning, places where human ambition, faith, and creativity found form in stone. And as the tropical rains continue to fall on the Gulf Coast, washing over the basalt faces, the heads endure. They keep their vigil through the millennia, holding their secrets just beyond our grasp, waiting for the day we may finally understand what or who they were meant to be. Chapter 14: Mohenjo-Daro and the Indus Valley Civilization. On the banks of the Indus River, in what is now southern Pakistan, lie the silent ruins of a city once alive with order and design, Mohenjo-Daro, the Mound of the Dead. Today it rises as a scatter of crumbling brick mounds against a flat horizon, sun-scorched and windswept. But nearly 5,000 years ago, this was one of the great cities of the ancient world, a marvel of planning, engineering, and human ambition. Unlike the pyramids of Egypt or the ziggurats of Mesopotamia, Mohenjo-Daro is not dominated by monumental tombs or towering temples. Its grandeur is quieter, embedded in the rhythm of its streets and the logic of its design. The city was built upon a precise grid, with straight avenues crossing at right angles, dividing the settlement into neighborhoods and districts. Houses, made of standardized baked bricks, rose in orderly rows. Some stood 2 stories high, complete with courtyards, staircases, and wells. In many ways, it feels strikingly modern, as if the people who lived here sought harmony, not through kingship or conquest, but through the architecture of daily life. Water was the lifeblood of the city. Every home, regardless of size, had access to wells or bathing areas. Drains ran beneath the streets, covered with slabs of brick, carrying wastewater away from the houses. Inspection holes allowed for cleaning and repair. In a world where most civilizations struggled with sanitation, Mohenjo-Daro's people engineered a system that would not be rivaled until Rome thousands of years later. To walk its ancient streets is to glimpse an early vision of urban living, thoughtful, functional, and surprisingly egalitarian. At the heart of the city stood the Great Bath, a vast sunken pool lined with baked brick and sealed with bitumen. Wide steps descended from either end, and surrounding rooms may have served as dressing areas or spaces for ritual. No written records survive to explain its purpose, but the care of its construction suggests more than simple utility. Was it a place of purification, where citizens bathed in preparation for ceremony? Was it a civic gathering space, uniting the city through water? Or was it a symbol of renewal, linking the people of the Indus to ancient traditions of sacred rivers and life-giving floods? And yet, despite its sophistication, Mohenjo-Daro keeps its silence. The people of the Indus Valley left behind thousands of inscribed seals and tablets, but their script has never been deciphered. Tiny symbols, animals, figures, abstract marks appear again and again, stamped onto clay, carved into stone, etched onto pottery. Some scholars see them as words, others as symbols of trade or ritual, but without a bilingual key, like the Rosetta Stone was for Egyptian hieroglyphs. Their voices remain locked away. Because of this silence, we know little of their rulers, their gods, or their myths. There are no kings' lists, no grand monuments proclaiming conquest or divine favor. The society that built Mohenjo-Daro seems almost deliberately anonymous. Power was not concentrated in palaces or temples. Instead, authority may have flowed through councils, guilds, or merchant groups. Some imagine a civilization where the collective mattered more than the individual, where order was sustained not by dynasties but by shared systems. If true, it would stand as one of history's most unusual experiments in urban life. Trade bound Mohenjo-Daro to the wider world. Seals from the city have been found as far as Mesopotamia, and Mesopotamian texts speak of merchants from a distant land called Malu, believed to be the Indus. The city exported carnelian beads, cotton, textiles, ivory, and lapis lazuli. In return, it imported silver, tin, and luxury goods. Its streets may have echoed with languages from distant lands, its marketplaces alive with exchange. The Indus was not isolated, but part of the earliest global web of commerce. But around 1900 BCE, the order began to unravel. Streets fell into disrepair. Standardization of bricks declined, wells silted up, and drains clogged. The great city that had stood for centuries was gradually abandoned. Why? The reasons remain uncertain. And each theory adds another layer to the mystery. Some point to climate change, the shifting of monsoon patterns, the drying of rivers. Geological studies suggest that the mighty Gagahakra, perhaps once a branch of the Saraswati River, described in later Vedic texts, dwindled and died around this time. Without water, cities faltered. Others see evidence of tectonic activity, earthquakes that may have altered river courses and disrupted the delicate balance of agriculture and trade. There are theories of invasion, that Indo-Aryan migrants swept into the subcontinent, disrupting the urban order. Yet archaeological evidence for violent conquest is thin. Few weapons have been found, and the city lacks signs of widespread destruction. Disease is another possibility. Skeletons unearthed in Mohenjo-Daro show signs of sudden death, perhaps from epidemic. Was the end of the city brought not by armies, but by invisible enemies? Drought, flood, plague, whatever the cause. By 1700 BCE, Mohenjo-Daro lay abandoned, its bricks crumbled, its wells dried, its streets silent. Over time, layers of dust and soil buried it, until even memory faded. When it was rediscovered in the 1920s by archaeologists like R.D. Banerjee and Sir John Marshall, it was a revelation, an entire civilization lost to history, equal in scale and sophistication to Egypt and Mesopotamia, yet hidden for millennia. The rediscovery of Mohenjo-Daro reshaped our understanding of the ancient world. It revealed that urban life, far from being born in just a few river valleys, emerged in parallel across continents. That the people of the Indus, though silent in their own words, had created a society of balance and ingenuity. And yet, it also reminded us of the fragility of civilization, that even the most advanced systems can falter, that climate, earth, and time have the final say. Today, Mohenjo-Daro is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, but it remains under threat. Rising groundwater, salt deposits, and neglect have damaged its fragile bricks. What remains is a fraction of what once stood. To walk there now is to move through shadows, low walls, marking the outlines of vanished houses. Streets leading nowhere, the great bath empty of water. The silence is profound, as if the city itself still refuses to give up its secrets. And yet, Mohenjo-Daro speaks in subtler ways. In the grid of its streets, in the care of its drains, in the uniformity of its bricks, we glimpse a vision of order. In its seals, we sense a language waiting to be heard, a mythos locked away. In its abandonment, we read a cautionary tale of how civilizations rise and fall, often with little warning. The Indus Valley civilization remains one of humanity's great enigmas. Was it a society of merchants and farmers bound by trade and shared rituals? Or was it something deeper, a culture guided by principles we can scarcely imagine? A world where power flowed through different channels, where the sacred was woven into the fabric of daily life. Until the script is deciphered, its story remains unfinished. At Mohenjo-Daro, the bricks endure, but the voices do not. We are left with silence, the kind of silence that beckons, that invites imagination as much as study. Perhaps in that silence lies the city's final gift, a reminder that history is never complete, that the ruins of the past are not simply relics, but questions carved in clay and stone. The mound rises still, weathered and worn, keeping watch over the Indus plain. Beneath the sun and the wind, Mohenjo-Daro waits not to reveal, but to remind us that the greatest civilizations are often the quietest, and that the truest mysteries are those that remain unanswered. Chapter 15. The Nazca lines across the arid plains of southern Peru. Where the sun beats down on a landscape of reddish-brown gravel, lies one of the world's most enduring enigmas. Etched into the earth are immense lines, some stretching for miles, forming perfect geometric shapes, spirals, trapezoids, and, most famously, giant figures of animals and plants. The hummingbird, the spider, the monkey with its spiraled tail, each is drawn with a single continuous line, their proportions precise despite being laid out on a massive scale. From the ground they are little more than shallow furrows in the desert crust, but from above, they become living images, vast geoglyphs that seem to speak to the sky. These geoglyphs, known collectively as the Nazca lines, were first brought to international attention in the 1920s, when pilots flying small aircraft over the desert realized the patterns formed coherent shapes. Local inhabitants, however, had known of their existence for centuries. The German mathematician and archaeologist Maria Reich devoted her life to their study, painstakingly measuring, mapping, and cataloging the figures. She argued that the lines formed a vast astronomical calendar, aligning with solstices and equinoxes, allowing the Nazca to track seasonal changes in a land where rainfall was rare and precious. Dating methods suggest the lines were created between roughly 500 BCE and 500 CE, during the height of the Nazca culture. The technique was simple but ingenious. Workers removed the darkened surface stones to expose the lighter soil beneath, creating a lasting contrast. The hyperarid climate of the Pampas de Jumana preserved them for over 1,000 years. Even today, a single footprint can last decades on this fragile canvas, which is why the lines remain visible despite their age. But why did the Nazca create them? This question has given rise to countless theories. Some scholars suggest they were ritual pathways, walked in processions during ceremonies meant to invoke rain or fertility from the gods. The desert floor would have become a sacred stage, its patterns visible not to human eyes but to the divine. Others argue that the shapes were offerings, messages to sky deities who watched from above, perhaps imagined as looking down from the mountain ridges or even the heavens themselves. The geoglyphs' astronomical alignments are tantalizing. Some lines appear to point to solstice sunrises or to prominent stars. Reich's maps show that certain trapezoids seem to frame the horizon points where celestial bodies would rise or set. Yet not all lines fit this pattern, and many scholars now think that geoglyphs served multiple functions, some ritual, some symbolic. What is certain is that the Nazca culture depended on careful water management. They built an extensive system of underground aqueducts known as puquayos, which still function today. The geoglyphs may have been part of this hydrological worldview, calling upon divine forces to bless the land with the rains necessary for survival. Some figures, such as the frog and the spiral, may represent fertility symbols linked to water. Others take the mystery further. The sheer scale and precision of the designs have inspired speculation that they were intended to be seen from the air, an idea famously popularized by Erich von Däniken, who proposed extraterrestrial visitors as the intended audience, or even the designers. While mainstream archaeology rejects such claims, the notion endures in popular imagination. Whether gods or ancestors, spirits or celestial beings, whoever the audience was, the geoglyphs suggest a communication that transcends the ordinary. The Nazca people themselves are long gone, their society giving way to environmental challenges and shifting cultures by around 600 CE. What remains is this silent, sprawling masterpiece. There are more than 800 straight lines, 300 geometric shapes, and 70 animal and plant figures, covering nearly 450 square kilometers. They are best seen at sunrise, when the low angle of light casts subtle shadows along their edges, revealing their forms in breathtaking clarity. Standing on one of the observation towers, built along the Pan-American Highway, you can glimpse only fragments: the tail of a monkey, the wing of a condor, enough to hint at the vastness of what lies beyond your sight. It is humbling to realize that the creators worked without any ability to see their creations from above, relying only on ground measurements, wooden stakes, and ropes to keep the lines straight. Their understanding of scale and proportion was astonishing, and yet, despite decades of research, no one can say with certainty what they were for. They may have been a form of pilgrimage, a way of walking prayers into the earth. They may have marked the turning of the seasons, the dance of sun and stars that governed planting and harvest. Or perhaps they were something more personal, messages of devotion, pleas for rain, stories written across the desert to be read by the eternal sky. As dusk falls over the pampas and the desert wind sweeps across the plain, the geoglyphs seem almost to shimmer. They are at once simple and profound lines drawn in the dust, yet holding the weight of centuries. In their silence they remind us that not all messages are meant to be fully understood. Some are meant only to be witnessed, to remind those who come after that there was once a people who spoke to the heavens in a language of geometry and grace. And so the Nazca lines remain, patiently awaiting the gaze of each new generation, their meaning suspended between earth and sky. Chapter 16. The Shagir idol. From the depths of a Siberian peat bog, preserved in dark waters for millennia, a figure rose from the earth, tall, ancient, and enigmatic. It was 1894 when gold miners in the Ural Mountains unearthed the fragments of a colossal wooden sculpture, later reassembled into a towering form nearly twice the height of a man. This was the Shagir idol, carved more than 12,000 years ago, the oldest wooden monument known to humanity. Older than Stonehenge, older than the pyramids, older than the first cities. The survival of such a figure is almost miraculous. Wood decays quickly, vulnerable to insects, fire, and time. Only the oxygen-deprived stillness of the peat preserved it, sealing away its story for ages beyond memory. When first reassembled in the late 19th century, scholars struggled to comprehend its age. Radiocarbon dating in the 1990s suggested it was over 9,000 years old, astonishing in itself. But further tests in 2018 pushed the date even deeper into prehistory, revealing it was carved around 12,500 years ago. In the immediate wake of the last ice age, the Shagir idol stands nearly 5 meters tall in its reconstructed form. Its surface is covered in geometric carvings, zigzags, chevrons, cross-hatchings, and winding lines. Along its length appear at least 7 distinct faces, human-like yet abstract, stacked one above the other, as though the sculpture embodies multiple beings, or a sequence of spirits ascending toward the sky. The patterns are not random decoration. They appear deliberate, intentional, perhaps a code, a cosmology, a myth inscribed in the language of line and form. For the people who carved it, the Ice Age world was in transition. Glaciers were retreating. Forests spread where once there had been tundra. Giant animals, mammoths, woolly rhinos, still roamed but were dwindling. Human groups lived as hunter-gatherers, moving across vast landscapes, carrying with them traditions older than agriculture. To carve a monument of this scale, from larch wood split and shaped with stone tools, required extraordinary effort. This was no casual work. It was an act of devotion, of memory, of belief. What did the idol represent? Some scholars see it as a sacred totem, mapping the cosmos as early peoples understood it. The stacked faces may depict ancestor spirits, or guardians of different realms, underworld, earth and sky. The zigzags might represent water, mountains, or paths of transformation. Others suggested encoded mythic narratives, a record of stories now long forgotten. The idol may have been a teacher, a memory aid in cultures without writing, its carved symbols guiding the telling of sacred histories. The choice to place it in a bog is no less mysterious. Across many cultures, wetlands are liminal places, neither land nor water, associated with thresholds between worlds. In later European prehistory, offerings of weapons, jewelry, even human lives were consigned to bogs as gifts to gods or ancestors. Was the Shigir idol likewise deposited as an offering, a guardian placed in the deep earth to oversee the world of spirits? Or was the bog a place of concealment, where knowledge too powerful or sacred for ordinary eyes was hidden away? The idol forces us to reconsider our picture of Ice Age humanity. We often imagine these people as primitive, concerned only with survival. Yet the Shigir idol reveals a society with symbolism, with ritual, with a vision of the cosmos that stretched beyond daily life. To carve such a figure is to declare that meaning exists, that the world is ordered, and that humanity has a place within it. In its silent lines, we glimpse an ancient philosophy, fragile yet enduring across 12 millennia. And yet, much of the idol is missing. When it was first recovered, parts were lost or damaged. What we see today is only a portion of its original height, perhaps less than half. How many more faces once adorned it? What greater pattern did its carvings form? The mystery deepens in absence, in the knowledge that the idol we study is but a shadow of what once stood. Still, even in fragments, its presence is profound. To stand before it today in the Sverdlovsk Regional Museum is to feel the weight of deep time pressing in, not through stone or bone, but through wood, something intimate and living. The idol speaks of a humanity both alien and familiar, a reminder that symbolism and spirit are as old as survival itself. Its zigzags and faces may never be deciphered, yet they whisper of a forgotten mythos. Perhaps they told of a creation, of spirits moving between worlds, of the paths that bind life and death. Perhaps they warned of dangers, or taught moral codes. Perhaps they were prayers carved in line and wood, reaching across generations. Whatever their meaning, they remain silent lines from an age when glaciers still lingered and the world was new. In the stillness of the bog, the idol waited. Through the fall of empires, the rise of cities, the birth of writing and the spread of faiths, it endured unseen, sleeping in dark waters, until, by chance, it emerged again, to remind us that long before history began, humanity was already carving stories into the world. The Shigir idol is not simply an artifact. It is a survivor of time, of silence, of forgetting. It stands as both question and answer, both presence and absence, a voice from 12,000 years ago that cannot be translated, but still demands to be heard. And in its mute faces and winding lines we are left with wonder. What wisdom was carved into its form? What worlds did it describe? And what memories, once alive in the mouths of storytellers, now lie forever beneath the surface of the past? The idol does not tell. It only stands, watching, waiting, as it has for 12,000 years. Chapter 17. The Lost City of Helicon. A winter night in 373 BCE. The ground along the coast of the Gulf of Corinth began to tremble. The ancient city of Helik, once a proud polis of Achaia, sat near the shore. Its temples, marketplaces, and homes clustered beneath the stars. The shaking grew violent, and according to later accounts, the earth split open. The sea rushed in with a roar. By morning, the city was gone. Helik, its temples, its citizens, its harbor, had vanished beneath the waves. This disaster shocked the Greek world. Writers such as Pausanias, Strabo, and Diodorus Siculus spoke of the catastrophe for centuries afterward. Fishermen claimed they could still see the outlines of its buildings through the clear waters, its colonnades and statues shimmering just beneath the surface. For the Greeks, the story became a warning, a reminder of the power of Poseidon, god of the sea and of earthquakes, whose wrath could erase a city overnight. It was also a mystery, one that endured long after Helik's memory faded from history. Helik had been a significant city-state, the seat of the Achaean League before its destruction. Its patron deity was Poseidon Heliconios, and its grand temple dedicated to him drew pilgrims from across the region. The city controlled fertile farmland, engaged in maritime trade, and even minted its own coins. To lose such a city so suddenly was more than a tragedy, it was a cultural wound. Ancient commentators likened Helik's fate to divine punishment, and in time it became a moral parable about hubris and the fragility of human achievement. For centuries, Helik's exact location was lost. The sea receded, coastlines shifted, and layers of silt buried what remained. Travelers speculated about where the city had been, but no firm evidence was found. Its story became part of a wider tradition of drowned cities and vanished civilizations, echoing faintly alongside Plato's tale of Atlantis. Some even wondered if Helic's destruction was an inspiration for Plato's narrative of a once great power humbled by disaster. In the late 20th century, the mystery of Helic was finally revisited. In the 1990s, archaeologists led by Dora Katsonopoulou and Stephen Sauter began systematic surveys of the coastal plain near the modern village of Rizomé. Rather than searching under the sea, they focused inland, theorizing that centuries of sedimentation had buried the city rather than leaving it submerged. Their insight proved correct. Using ground-penetrating radar, coring and careful excavation, they uncovered streets, foundations, and pottery belonging to the classical period. The ruins revealed a city frozen in time. Buildings lay collapsed as though struck suddenly, supporting the ancient accounts of a violent earthquake. Layers of marine sediment confirmed the presence of flooding, perhaps a tsunami that followed the quake. Excavators discovered coins stamped with the image of Poseidon, further linking the site to Helic's identity. Nearby, an even older Bronze Age settlement was found, showing that this area had been inhabited for millennia and had faced similar seismic events before. Yet the excavation of Helic raises as many questions as it answers. Why was the city not rebuilt? Other Greek palaeus destroyed by earthquakes, such as Sparta, managed to recover. Perhaps the destruction was so total and the ground so unstable that survivors abandoned the site entirely. Or perhaps the catastrophe was remembered as a sacred judgment, rendering the land taboo. Ancient sources say the entire population perished, but is it possible some fled inland, carrying their traditions with them to other cities? The rediscovery of helicasts provided archaeologists with a unique case study of seismic catastrophe in the ancient world. It illustrates how earthquakes could not only destroy but transform landscapes, altering coastlines and erasing cities from memory. It also reminds us how myth and memory preserve traces of truth for even after more than 2,000 years. The fishermen's tales of ruins beneath the sea were not entirely wrong. Walking through the excavation site today, one can see the faint outlines of streets, the foundations of homes, and the scattered remnants of daily life. Broken pottery lies where it fell, as if time itself stopped in that moment of disaster. Standing here, the silence of the place feels almost ceremonial, as though the city remains a shrine to its own destruction. Perhaps that is why Helic still holds such power over the imagination. It is not merely a city lost to nature, but a story of divine justice, of the sea reclaiming what was once given. Like Atlantis, it sits at the edge of history and legend, a threshold where fact and myth meet. And as archaeologists continue to dig, as more of Helic emerges from the earth, we are reminded that countless other cities may yet lie hidden, erased not by time, but by the shifting earth beneath our feet. Somewhere, just beyond our sight, more lost worlds wait, their stones silent, their stories untold. Chapter 18: The Copper Scroll. In 1952. Deep within the limestone cliffs that frame the Dead Sea, a team of archaeologists entered a cave unlike the others. Here, amid the dust and fragments, they uncovered something extraordinary. Not parchment, not papyrus, but two brittle sheets of hammered copper, rolled tightly into cylinders and corroded with age. This was no ordinary manuscript. It was the Copper Scroll, the most enigmatic of all the Dead Sea Scrolls. Unlike its companions, hymns, apocalyptic visions, and fragments of ancient scripture, the Copper Scroll carried a different voice. Etched into its surface were no prayers, no visions of angels or prophets, but a list, 64 entries, precise and direct, describing treasures hidden in wells, cisterns, courtyards and burial places. Gold and silver measured not in handfuls but in talent amounts so vast they stagger the imagination. If its words are to be believed, the wealth described would rival the treasuries of kings. The Copper Scroll was so unusual that its discovery raised immediate problems. Unlike parchment, copper could not simply be unrolled without breaking. To preserve it, conservators in Manchester carefully cut the scroll into sections with a fine saw, laying its text open piece by piece. Only then did the words emerge, written in a blunt, almost workmanlike Hebrew, lacking the poetic grace of other scrolls. Its language was practical, its intent unmistakable, a catalogue of hidden riches. But whose treasure was it, and why had it been recorded in this way? Some scholars have suggested it belonged to the Qumran sect, perhaps the Essene, who sought to preserve their community's wealth in secret as Roman legions advanced across Judea in the 1st century CE. Others believe it was connected to the Jerusalem temple itself, written during the Jewish revolt of 66 to 70 CE, when priests may have sought to safeguard sacred treasures before the city fell. Still others argue it may be a record of ritual deposits, symbolic rather than material. Its gold and silver metaphors for spiritual wisdom hidden in sacred places. Yet the specificity of the scroll resists easy dismissal. It gives measurements, not vague references, but exact weights. 70 talents of silver here, 42 talents of gold there. It names locations with cryptic detail: in the cistern by the olive tree, beneath the steps, 40 cubits deep, Such precision suggests more than allegory. It feels like instructions, a map written for those who already knew the landscape it described. Over the decades, expeditions have attempted to trace the copper scroll's words. Treasure hunters, both official and clandestine, have searched the deserts and ruins of the Judean wilderness. No treasure has been found. Some argue that the Romans seized it long ago, or that the scroll was a decoy designed to mislead. Others whisper that discoveries have been made in secret, concealed from the public eye. The absence of proof only deepens the allure. The scroll's very material raises questions. Why cast a text in copper when parchment was the norm? Copper is durable, meant to endure across centuries, resistant to fire and decay. Whoever commissioned it intended the record to survive, to last longer than human memory, longer even than the fall of nations. Was it meant for the distant future, for those who would someday reclaim what had been lost? Or was it a desperate attempt to outlast destruction, ensuring that wealth or knowledge would not vanish with the ruin of its keepers? Its language, too, is peculiar. Scholars note its stark, almost administrative tone, distinct from other sectarian texts. Some believe it may have been written by someone outside the Qumran community, perhaps even by a temple scribe. If so, the copper scroll stands apart, a voice not of prophecy but of logistics, a ledger of things too precious to be left unwritten. And yet, beneath its cold precision, mystery lingers. Were the treasures ever real, or were they already gone when the scroll was hidden? Perhaps the wealth it described lay not in metals but in meaning, an esoteric map, cloaked in the language of gold and silver to protect truths only the initiated could decode. The copper scroll forces us to confront an unsettling truth about the ancient world. So much remains unaccounted for. The grandeur of the temple in Jerusalem, the wealth of dynasties, the sacred vessels said to have been crafted in the days of Solomon. Where did they go? Were they melted down, plundered, destroyed, or do they lie still, in caves and chambers yet unopened, waiting in silence beneath desert stone? To hold a copper scroll in the mind is to feel the tug of two worlds, one of material desire, the dream of treasures vast enough to change empires, and one of spiritual hunger, the search for hidden wisdom, a legacy more enduring than gold. Perhaps the scroll was meant to contain both, its text layered with meanings that could speak to different readers across time. Today, the copper scroll rests in the Jordan Museum in Amman, divided into sections, its corroded surface still etched with the riddle it carries. Visitors can look upon it, but its secret remains untouched. For every line is a door, and behind each door lies silence, a silence that neither excavation nor interpretation has yet broken. The desert holds its secrets well. Sand buries, stone conceals, and memory fades. The copper scroll stands at the threshold between history and legend, reminding us that some knowledge was never meant to be easy, never meant to be complete. Its words endure, but their truth remains hidden. Were they a guide to treasures long lost, or a cipher pointing toward mysteries of the spirit? The answer lies somewhere beyond reach, waiting like the buried hoards it describes in the deep silence of time. Chapter 19. The Yonaguni Monument. Beneath the restless waters of the East China Sea, off the southern coast of Japan's Ryukyu Islands, lies a structure that has stirred one of the most enduring archaeological debates of the modern age. Here, at depths ranging from 5 to 25 meters, divers descend into a world of shifting light, where the sea swallows sound and time seems to halt. As they approach the seafloor, the outline emerges: massive stone terraces, sharply cut steps, and monumental platforms, as though an entire city had been frozen mid-rise and then claimed by the ocean. This is the Yonaguni Monument, first brought to worldwide attention in 1986 when a local diver, Kiichiro Aratek, encountered what appeared to be an immense, stepped structure beneath the waves. At first it seemed too geometric to be natural, right angles carved with a precision that evoked ziggurats or sunken temples, vertical walls rising like fortifications, and flat plazas where the sand rests as though waiting for worshippers who will never return. Marine geologist Masaki Kimura, fascinated by the find, dedicated decades of study to the site. He mapped the formations, took measurements, and compared them with terrestrial ruins of Okinawa and Taiwan. What he documented astonished the world. A formation roughly 150 meters long and 40 meters wide, with staircases, what appeared to be avenues, and even a feature some called a ceremonial archway. Kimura became convinced that Yonaguni was not merely a quirk of geology, but the remnants of a lost city, perhaps more than 10,000 years old. Such a claim, if true, would be revolutionary. It would mean that complex stone architecture existed in East Asia during the late Ice Age, millennia before the rise of Sumer, Egypt, or the Indus Valley. It would force us to reconsider when and where humans first gathered to shape stone into monuments of memory. Yet mainstream geologists remain cautious, even skeptical. They argue that Yonaguni sandstone is naturally prone to fracturing along vertical and horizontal planes, creating sharp-edged steps and platforms over time. Erosion by waves, earthquakes, and sea currents, they say, could produce features that mimic human construction. The debate has never been settled. On one hand, Yonaguni's sharp right angles, terraces, and perfectly flat surfaces seem too orderly to be accidental. Divers have even reported what looked like carving marks, as though tools once shaped these stones. Some claim to see patterns resembling roads or channels, even possible megalithic statues half buried in the sand. On the other hand, the ocean is a patient sculptor, and nature is capable of producing formations so regular that they appear to be works of deliberate design, as seen in Ireland's Giant's Causeway or the basalt columns of Iceland. Descending into Yonaguni's depths, the question becomes not merely academic, but visceral. Divers speak of the place as having a presence, an atmosphere of solemnity, as though entering a sanctuary built for gods long forgotten. The water is clear, the silence almost cathedral. Shafts of sunlight filter through the surface, tracing geometric lines across the stone. Swimming along its ledges feels like walking through the ruins of a drowned world, as if a city waits, just beyond recognition, to be remembered. If Yonaguni is indeed artificial, its builders would have lived during a time when sea levels were far lower than today, during the last glacial maximum, when vast ice sheets locked up much of the world's water and coastlines extended far beyond their modern limits. As the ice melted and the seas rose, entire landscapes vanished. Perhaps Yonaguni was one of them, abandoned as the ocean claimed the land, its memory fading with each generation, until nothing was left but legend. This idea resonates with myths found across the Pacific and beyond. Japanese folklore tells of Urashima-ta, a fisherman who visits a palace beneath the sea, only to find centuries have passed when he returns. Other traditions speak of vanished islands and sunken kingdoms, swallowed by the waves in acts of cosmic rebalancing. Could Yonaguni be the memory of such a place made stone, a real-world counterpart to these tales? Scientific investigation continues. Sonar scans and 3D mapping have revealed new details, including what some interpret as a pyramid-shaped mound adjacent to the main terrace. Artifacts, however, remain elusive. No tools, no pottery, no definitive evidence of human occupation has been recovered, leaving the argument suspended between tantalizing possibility and geological coincidence. Kimura and others maintain that traces of human activity exist in the form of stone arrangements and what they believe may be quarry marks, while skeptics insist that until artifacts are found, Yonaguni cannot be declared a lost city. And so, Yonaguni sits in liminality, not fully natural, not fully proven as human-made, a riddle lying quietly beneath the waves. Whether it is the remnant of a forgotten civilization or a masterpiece of nature, it invites us to peer into prehistory and wonder what worlds were lost when the ice melted, when shorelines shifted, when memory itself was drowned. Perhaps that is the true power of Yonaguni. It forces us to confront how much we do not know. The ocean covers nearly 3/4 of our planet, and its depths remain less explored than the surface of the moon. How many other Yonagunis lie hidden, waiting for the day when we rediscover them? How many chapters of human history remain locked away beneath the sea, their stones dark, their plazas empty, their stories whispering only to those who dare to listen beneath the waves? Chapter 20: The Nebra Sky Disc. In the heart of Germany, on a hill once known as Mittelberg, a secret lay buried beneath the earth for more than 3 millennia. It was 1999 when looters armed with metal detectors and shovels stumbled upon a bronze object unlike anything they had ever seen. Green with patina, but gleaming still with gold inlays, it was a disc, heavy, circular, and silent. This artifact, later named the Nebra Sky Disc, would come to be recognized as the world's oldest known depiction of the cosmos, measuring just over 30 centimeters across and weighing more than 2 kilograms. The disc is deceptively simple in form. Against the dark green bronze, delicate plates of hammered gold reveal a composition that seems both symbolic and scientific. A radiant circle, a crescent, and a cluster of tiny dots, perhaps the stars themselves. At first glance, it seems abstract, yet closer study reveals a level of astronomical knowledge that should not have existed in Bronze Age Europe, at least, not according to conventional timelines. The gold circle is most often interpreted as the sun, the crescent, a waxing or waning moon, and the group of 7 dots, arranged in a compact cluster, aligns almost perfectly with the Pleiades, the 7 sisters, a star cluster that has carried mythic significance from the deserts of Mesopotamia to the oral traditions of Native America. That the makers of the disc knew of the Pleiades and placed them with such care reveals profound awareness of the rhythms of the sky around these celestial bodies. Later additions seem to guide the observer still further. 2 golden arcs curve along the edges of the disc. They are thought to mark the horizon, framing the points where the sun rises and sets at the summer and winter solstice. A third golden plate, placed low across the bottom, is often interpreted as a solar bark, the vessel that carries the sun across the heavens, a motif found in ancient Egypt and beyond. Taken together, the Nebra Sky Disc is not simply art. It is a tool, an instrument that encodes the movements of the heavens into a portable form. Scholars believe it could have been used to synchronize solar and lunar calendars, to align ritual life, agriculture, and worship with the cycles of the sky. And yet the story of the disc is more than the story of its symbols. It is also the story of its secrecy, its loss, and its rediscovery. The looters who unearthed it in 1999 did not recognize its significance. For years it was traded through the shadows of the antiquities market, nearly vanishing into private collections. Only in 2002 did authorities seize it in a dramatic sting operation in Basel, Switzerland. What might have been lost forever to the world of collectors was brought back into the light of scholarship. From there, analysis began. Radiocarbon dating of organic material found alongside it, and typological study of the swords and axes buried in the same hoard, fixed its age to around 1600 BCE. This placed it firmly within the European Bronze Age, centuries before the rise of Greece, nearly 2,000 years before Rome, and long before written astronomy appeared in the records of Northern Europe. But how could a culture of that era have possessed such sophisticated knowledge of the heavens? The builders of Stonehenge had aligned stones to track the solstices nearly 1,000 years earlier. Yet the Nebra Sky Disc goes further. It does not merely align with the landscape. It encodes the very cycles of sun, moon, and stars into a single object. This raises questions that ripple across archaeology. Was the disc the work of a local genius, a single artisan attuned to the sky? Or does it represent knowledge carried from older centers of civilization, from Mesopotamia, where priests observed the heavens, or from Egypt, where star clocks adorned tombs? Could the disc be evidence of cultural exchange, a fragment of wisdom carried along trade routes that wove Europe and the Near East together in ways we are only beginning to uncover? The disc's symbolism suggests a fusion of traditions. The solar bark recalls Egypt, the Pleiades connected to Mesopotamian myth, where their rising signaled the beginning of planting seasons. The solstice arcs speak to a deep engagement with the European landscape, where long winters and fleeting summers demanded careful reckoning with the turning of the year. In the Nebra Sky Disc, these elements converge, creating a cosmological map that bridges worlds. Its significance did not end with its creation. Evidence shows that the disc was modified over time. Gold plates were added, removed, rearranged. At some stage, the horizon arcs were fixed into place. Later still, small perforations were punched around its rim, perhaps to mount it onto wood or fabric. It seems to have been a living object, altered across generations, its meaning shifting with each age. Eventually, though, it was buried. Alongside swords, axes, and bracelets, it was interred beneath the soil of Middle. Was this an offering to the gods, a ritual deposit, meant to return sacred knowledge to the earth? Or was it hidden, its power too great to be left in human hands? No one can say, but for more than 3,000 years it remained undisturbed, its golden stars sealed in silence. When it finally re-emerged, it carried with it echoes of a forgotten worldview, a worldview in which the heavens were not distant, impersonal bodies, but active forces shaping ritual and survival. The Nebra Sky Disc shows us that long before Europe's written traditions, people here watched the sky with care, mapping its rhythms, encoding its secrets in art and metal, and yet mysteries remained. Was it truly a practical instrument, a Bronze Age computer guiding farmers and priests alike? Or was it a sacred object, symbolic rather than functional, a talisman binding heaven and earth? Some scholars see it as both a bridge between science and spirit, embodying the way ancient peoples saw no division between the two. Today, the disc rests in the State Museum of Prehistory in Halle, Germany. Visitors who stand before it often describe the same sensation, the uncanny feeling of recognition. Its design is simple, universal, familiar: a sun, a moon, a cluster of stars. In its silence it speaks across 4,000 years, whispering that our ancestors too lifted their eyes to the sky, seeking meaning in the stars. The Nebra Sky Disc reminds us that the line between myth and science, between ritual and measurement, is far thinner than we imagine. It stands as both artifact and riddle, proof that even in the depths of prehistory, the human mind was already charting the cosmos. But the greatest question remains unanswerable. Was this knowledge local, born of careful observation by those who tilled the fields of Central Europe? Or does the disc carry within it fragments of a much older wisdom, a knowledge that moved across continents and civilizations, surviving only in whispers, until it was cast in bronze and buried beneath a German hill? The disc gazes back at us, its stars still gleaming. It offers no answer, only a reflection of our own longing to know. Like the night sky itself, it is both map and mystery, eternal, unwrestlebly infinite. Chapter 21: The Library of Ashurbanipal, the scorched ruins of ancient Nineveh. In the dust of what was once the Assyrian Empire's shining capital, a miracle of preservation awaited discovery. In the mid-19th century, British archaeologist Austen Henry Layard and his successors dug into the buried palaces of Assyria and found something that would change our understanding of the ancient Near East. Tens of thousands of clay tablets, carefully inscribed, stored, and catalogued, the remnants of the first great library in recorded history. This was the Library of Ashur, named after the last great king of Assyria, who ruled from 668 to 627 BCE in an age where most kings gloried in conquest and monument building. Ashurbanipal was unusual. He boasted not only of his military campaigns, but of his literacy, an extraordinary rarity for a Mesopotamian king. He read Sumerian and Akkadian, he collected texts from across Mesopotamia, and he ordered his scribes to copy and preserve the intellectual heritage of centuries. In his reign, Nineveh became not merely the seat of an empire, but a repository of human memory within the palace walls. The king's archivists gathered tablets from distant cities, copying myths, prayers, incantations, and lists of omens. Medical treatises described illnesses and remedies. Legal codes recorded contracts and property disputes. Royal annals recounted battles and victories. Some texts reached back more than a millennium, preserving the voices of the long-vanished Sumerians. Among these tablets lay one of the most astonishing literary treasures ever found, the Epic of Gilgamesh, humanity's earliest surviving great work of literature, with telling of a king's quest for immortality and his confrontation with mortality itself. When these tablets were first brought to light, and translated in the 1870s, they sent shockwaves through the scholarly and religious world. The flood narrative contained in the Gilgamesh epic closely mirrored the story of Noah in Genesis, but it was older by centuries. The discovery forced scholars to confront the reality that biblical traditions had deep Mesopotamian roots, shared with cultures of Sumer, Akkad, and Babylon. It opened a window into a world that had been silent for over 2,000 years, revealing a civilization whose intellectual achievements rivaled those of later Greece and Rome. Yet for all that has been recovered, the library is far from complete. Archaeologists estimate that Ashurbanipal's collection may have contained over 30,000 tablets. Many are broken, their cuneiform texts fragmented like pieces of a cosmic puzzle. Entire sections are missing, perhaps destroyed when Nineveh was sacked by the Medes and Babylonians in 612 BC, or still buried somewhere beneath the mounds of northern Iraq, waiting to be uncovered. Even among what we have, much remains cuneiform, though largely deciphered, is complex and demanding. Some tablets contain obscure dialects or technical writings whose meaning scholars are still unraveling. Each year, new translations are published, revealing details about astronomy, mathematics, and medicine that continue to reshape our picture of Mesopotamian science. Consider the Omen series known as Entma Anu, a vast collection of celestial observations preserved on dozens of tablets. These texts track lunar eclipses, planetary movements, and unusual appearances of stars, linking them with predictions about the fate of kings and kingdoms. In them, we glimpse a proto-scientific mindset, a determination to find order and meaning in the heavens. Were these merely superstitions, or did they encode centuries of careful astronomical records, knowledge that would later inform Greek and Islamic science? Elsewhere in the library, we find rituals for banishing demons, lists of medicinal plants, hymns to the gods, and mathematical tables that reveal a sophisticated grasp of geometry and numbers. This was not merely a library for entertainment, but a vast storehouse of practical and sacred knowledge, a royal attempt to gather the world's wisdom and hold it against the chaos that threatened the empire's borders. And yet, like so many monuments of human striving, the library could not save its creator. When Nineveh fell, flames swept through the city, toppling palaces and grinding statues to rubble. But the very medium that made the library possible, clay, ensured its survival. Unlike papyrus or parchment, clay tablets cannot burn. They were baked in the fires that destroyed Nineveh, transformed into nearly indestructible witnesses to the ancient world. Today, many of these tablets are housed in museums such as the British Museum, where they sit under glass, silent and inert, but each one is a voice from a vanished age, a message written 3 millennia ago and still legible to those who can read its script. To walk among them is to stand at the threshold of memory itself, confronted with the words of scribes who lived in a world of ziggurats, temple rituals, and imperial ambitions. And yet we are left with questions. What tablets have we not found? What knowledge is still hidden beneath the sands of Iraq and Syria, waiting for archaeologists brave enough and circumstances peaceful enough to recover it? Could there be lost works of mathematics, early histories of now-vanished cities, or accounts of floods and cataclysms that shaped the collective memory of humanity? Some researchers have speculated that the library might have contained even older texts, copies of antediluvian records from Sumerian times, or chronicles of kings who reigned for impossibly long spans, preserved from an age when myth and history were not yet separate. Whether these were allegory, astronomical code, or memory of a forgotten epoch, we cannot yet say. The library of Ashurbanipal remains both a treasure and a challenge, a reminder that our past is neither simple nor complete. Each tablet is a doorway, each translation a rediscovery, and for every line we read, countless more lie broken or missing, fragments of a story we are still piecing together. Perhaps somewhere beneath the soil of Mesopotamia lies another chamber, sealed and untouched since the fall of Nineveh, a place where the missing pieces wait, like sleeping embers, to ignite our understanding once again. Until then, the library stands as a half-told epic, whispering of knowledge, preserved against the tide of time, of wisdom that refuses to die. Chapter 22. The Karnak Stones. On the windswept coast of Brittany, where the Atlantic crashes against jagged rocks, lies one of the most enigmatic landscapes in Europe. Here, stretching across fields and valleys, are thousands of standing stones, Some rise as single monoliths, solitary against the horizon. Others stand in long, unbroken rows, their lines fading into the distance. Together, they form the Karnak stones, a megalithic complex older than the pyramids of Giza, older even than Stonehenge. It is believed that around 4500 BC, long before written history touched this corner of the world, communities labored to raise these stones. The sheer scale is staggering. More than 3,000 menhirs upright stones still survive today, though many more may once have stood. Some are modest in height, only a few feet tall. Others are colossal, weighing dozens of tons, their weathered surfaces scarred by thousands of winters. To walk among them is to enter a realm both human and otherworldly, a space where intention has outlived memory. The alignments at Karnak are among the most striking features. In the Menikar Murillo and Kurliskan fields, hundreds of stones march in parallel lines across the land, extending for miles. They stand shoulder to shoulder like an ancient army frozen in place, their order too deliberate to be chance. Scholars debate their purpose. Were they processional routes, guiding ritual gatherings through sacred landscapes? Were they astronomical, designed to track the rising and setting of the sun, the moon, or even distant stars? Or did they mark boundaries, territorial claims set in stone by communities seeking to root themselves in an ever-changing world? The truth remains elusive. Excavations have revealed little in the way of definitive answers. The stones bear no inscriptions, no carvings beyond the faintest traces of human hands. Unlike the dolmens and passage graves of Brittany, which speak clearly of funerary practice, the Karnak alignments remain mute. They resist explanation, demanding interpretation rather than offering it, and yet clues linger in their arrangement. At certain points, alignments seem to converge with solstices, suggesting that the builders possessed not only brute strength but also keen astronomical awareness. In other places, the stones appear to frame natural features, hills, rivers, the distant horizon, weaving the human-made with the eternal. Such patterns hint that the stones may have functioned as a vast open-air calendar, a map of time inscribed upon the earth itself. But there are other theories, more mythic in their nature. Local legend tells of an army of Roman soldiers turned to stone by the magician Merlin, frozen forever in these fields. Others speak of giants who once roamed Brittany, leaving these monuments as a testament to their strength. While such tales are born of later centuries, they carry within them a resonance, an acknowledgement that the Karnak stones are more than lifeless rocks. They are presences, figures with stories that elude our grasp. Transporting and erecting the stones would have required extraordinary effort. Some were hauled from quarries miles away, dragged by ropes, logs, and sheer determination. Others may have been raised by wooden frames, their bases sunk into pits to anchor them upright. The labor suggests not only technical knowledge but also a powerful social force, a community bound together by vision, compelled to act in unison across generations. What belief, what shared purpose, could inspire such monumental exertion? Archaeologists estimate that construction at Karnak spanned centuries, perhaps even a millennium. This was not the work of a single people in a single moment, but of a culture sustained over vast stretches of time. Each generation may have added, rearranged, or extended the alignments, layering intention upon intention until the landscape itself became sacred. The Karnak complex is not limited to alignments alone. Scattered across Brittany are dolmens, tumuli, and passage graves, megalithic structures where the dead were interred. Some of these tombs contain carvings of axes, spirals, and other motifs echoing symbols found across Europe. In this wider context, the Karnak stones may have been part of a network of ritual sites, linking the living and the dead, the earthly and the celestial. Yet no definitive answer emerges. The stones endure, but their language has been lost. To stand among them is to confront a silence more powerful than words, a silence that invites speculation but resists certainty. Perhaps that is their purpose, not to explain, but to provoke wonder, to draw the human mind toward mysteries that lie beyond comprehension. Today, the fields of Karnak are carefully protected, their stones fenced to guard against erosion and human wear. Visitors walk along designated paths, gazing across the alignments that stretch to the horizon. In the shifting light of dawn or dusk, the stones seem to come alive, their shadows long, their presence uncanny. The Atlantic winds whistle between them, carrying echoes of voices long vanished. The Karnak stones remind us of the depths of time, of human capacity to shape landscapes with vision and persistence. They remind us, too, that not all legacies are meant to be understood. Some are left deliberately open, their meanings fractured by centuries, their whispers caught only by those willing to listen. That as the sun sets over Brittany, the stones stand immovable, their silhouettes etched against the horizon. Were they markers of time, maps of the heavens, or silent sentinels guarding secrets we may never know? Their purpose remains beyond our reach, and perhaps it always will. The rows of Karnak remain, a frozen procession stretching into eternity, inviting us not to solve their riddle, but to stand within it. Chapter 23. The Mayan underworld of Xibalbamiev. The lush jungles of the Yucatan Peninsula lies a world as old as myth itself, a realm where sunlight does not reach, where water runs black and still, and where the air feels heavy with memory. The ancient Maya called this place Xibalba, the place of fright. To them it was more than a set of caves and sinkholes. It was the threshold to the underworld, a place where the souls of the dead traveled and where the living could commune with the powers that ruled life, death, and rebirth. Over the past 2 decades, archaeologists and cave divers have begun to explore these hidden chambers, navigating narrow passages and submerged tunnels that branched for miles beneath the surface. What they have found is extraordinary. In the darkness of these cenotes, natural sinkholes formed by collapsed limestone, lie offerings that have remained undisturbed for centuries. Ceramic vessels, jade beads, obsidian blades, and the bones of animals and humans. Each artifact seems to mark a moment when the living reached into the underworld to speak to their gods. The Maya saw the cosmos as a layered reality, the heavens above, the middle world of Earth, and the many levels of the underworld below. In their mythology, Xibalba was ruled by fearsome deities, the lords of death, who presided over trials that tested the souls of mortals. The Popol Vuh, the great Maya book of myth, tells of the hero twins who descended into Xibalba to confront its lords through games, sacrifices, and cunning trickery. The caves and cenotes may have been the stage for real-world rituals that mirrored these cosmic stories, binding myth and reality into a single act of devotion. The archaeological evidence suggests that the Maya ventured deep underground for ceremonial purposes. In some caves, traces of torches still blacken the ceilings, a reminder of the processions that wound their way into the darkness. Offerings were placed at strategic points near stalactites shaped like serpents, at the edges of underground pools, or in chambers that echoed like stone cathedrals. The presence of human remains adds a chilling dimension. Some appear to be sacrifices, carefully placed, their bones arranged as if to honor a pact with unseen powers. Others may represent those who drowned accidentally in the sacred wells, drawn too close to the edge during ceremonies of rainmaking or appeasement. One of the most famous of these sites is the sacred cenote at Chichen Itza, a vast circular sinkhole that plunges over 60 feet into green water. Spanish chroniclers wrote of gold, jade, and even human victims cast into its depths to honor the rain god Chok. When Edward Thompson dredged the cenote in the early 20th century, he recovered thousands of artifacts, carved discs, wooden objects miraculously preserved in the mud, and the bones of men, women, and children. Today, modern divers still find relics within the cenote's silent water, revealing that this was a place of repeated offerings across generations. But Chichen Itza is only one window into this underworld. In recent years, cave systems such as Balamku and Sakaktan have yielded discoveries that deepen the mystery. In Balamku, archaeologists uncovered caches of incense burners, figurines, and vessels that had remained untouched for over 1,000 years, perfectly preserved in the sealed darkness. Some vessels still contained offerings of food and drink, as if the rituals had just been performed. These findings hint at an intense and intimate relationship between the Maya and the subterranean world. The caves may have been seen as wombs of creation, places where life emerged and to which it would one day return. In times of drought, when crops failed and the sky remained mercilessly dry, priests and pilgrims descended into these caverns to plead with the gods of rain and fertility. The cenotes were portals through which they could send gifts, blood, and prayers into the heart of the earth. What makes these discoveries so compelling is the sense that they dissolve the line between the symbolic and the physical. The Maya did not merely imagine Xibalba, they entered it. They shaped their cities to align with the entrances to this underworld, building ceremonial roads called sakbib that led directly to For them, these were not just sources of water but sacred thresholds where the worlds touched. The underwater archaeology of the Yucatan is still in its infancy. Every year, divers map new passages and uncover new chambers. Some have found human skulls carefully placed on stone ledges. Others have seen ceramics left on stalagmites as if to transform them into altars. The deeper they go, the more they find evidence that these journeys were not taken lightly. The risks of drowning, of becoming lost in the labyrinth, must have been enormous. And yet the offerings show that generation after generation, people returned, repeating the sacred act of descent. There is something profoundly moving about this persistence. The Maya understood that life depended on a dialogue with forces greater than themselves, forces of death and renewal that resided beneath their feet. To enter Xibalba was to confront the heart of existence, to face fear and darkness and emerge transformed. And so we are left with haunting questions. How many more caves remain unexplored, still holding their secrets in perfect silence? What would we learn if we could recover every offering, every inscription, every trace of ritual hidden in the Yucatan's limestone veins? Could they reveal not only the fears of an ancient people, but their visions of cosmic harmony, their maps of the unseen world? Today, as divers swim through these flooded passageways, their lights glinting on walls shaped by millennia, they are not just scientists but pilgrims of a kind. They move through spaces where prayers once echoed and where, perhaps, the Maya believed the voices of the gods replied. The waters ripple as they pass, and for a moment, the border between past and present grows thin, as if Xibalba still waits for its story to be told in full. Perhaps, somewhere in the deepest chambers, a final offering lies undisturbed, a message left for those who would one day follow the path into the underworld. Until we find it, the caves of the Yucatan remain a place where myth and archaeology meet, where death and life are joined, and where the darkness beneath the earth still holds its secrets. Chapter 24. The mystery of Teotihuacan. Just beyond the edges of modern Mexico City, in the fertile basin of Mexico, lies a place that once rivaled the greatest cities of the ancient world. From the air, its plan is unmistakable. A vast grid of streets, neighborhoods, and monumental architecture, all dominated by a central avenue that stretches straight toward the horizon. This is the Avenue of the Dead, a name given by the Aztecs more than 1,000 years after the city had fallen silent. At its northern end rises the Pyramid of the Moon, echoing the sacred silhouette of the Cerro Gordo mountain behind it. At its heart towers the Pyramid of the Sun, one of the largest stone structures ever built in the Americas. Together they form the monumental core of Teotihuacan, the place where gods were born. But who were the people who raised this city of stone? Their name, their language, their rulers, even their myths, remain unknown. Teotihuacan is both one of the most extraordinary civilizations of the ancient world, and one of its greatest enigmas. Archaeologists estimate that by 500 CE, Teotihuacan was home to more than 100,000 inhabitants, perhaps even 200,000, making it one of the largest cities on Earth at the time. Its urban grid was laid out with a precision that still astonishes. Streets aligned to a sacred axis, neighborhoods organized around courtyards and temples, apartment compounds built from stone and adobe to house families, priests, and artisans. This was not a sprawling village but a planned metropolis, reflecting vision, hierarchy, and immense coordination. The city's core was dominated by its great pyramids. The Pyramid of the Sun, completed around 200 CE, rises over 70 meters high, constructed from millions of stone blocks. Its base measures more than 220 meters on each side, placing it among the largest pyramids in the world. Beneath it lies a mysterious cave, a natural lava tube modified into a chamber with 4 side rooms, as if designed to mirror a cosmic womb. Many scholars believe this cave was the city's founding sanctuary, the symbolic navel from which Teotihuacan was born. To the north stands the Pyramid of the Moon, smaller but no less imposing, aligned with the mountain behind it. Excavations here have revealed caches of offerings, obsidian blades, greenstone figurines, animal remains, and human sacrifices, tokens of dedication marking each new stage of construction. At the southern end of the Avenue of the Dead lies the Ciudadela, a vast enclosure dominated by the Temple of the Feathered Serpent. Its facade, once brightly painted, is carved with undulating serpents and sacred masks. Beneath its steps, archaeologists discovered mass graves of warriors, sacrificed in the city's early centuries, their hands bound, their mouths filled with offerings. Such discoveries hint at a society deeply structured around cosmic order, warfare, and ritual. Yet we know almost nothing of the rulers who commanded such works. Unlike the Maya, who left us inscriptions of kings and dates, Teotihuacan's monuments are silent. There are no hieroglyphs naming dynasties, no carved stele commemorating conquests. The city seems to have deliberately suppressed the cult of individual rulers, elevating instead a collective or priestly authority. Power here was faceless, as if the city itself, its pyramids, avenues, and mountains, was the true sovereign. The city's influence spread far beyond the basin of Mexico. Archaeological evidence shows Teotihuacan's presence in distant lands. Obsidian tools and pottery found in the Maya lowlands, murals imitated in Honduras, and architecture echoing its style across central Mexico. Teotihuacan was not just a city, it was an empire of trade, religion, and ideology. Its obsidian workshop supplied blades and mirrors throughout Mesoamerica, while its merchants carried goods, cacao, jade, shells across mountains and jungles. To others, Teotihuacan was both feared and revered, a place of immense power whose emissaries reshaped distant cultures. And yet, by 550 CE, the city began to unravel. Entire districts were burned, temples defaced, palaces abandoned. Archaeologists once thought this was the result of a foreign invasion, but the evidence suggests something more complex, an internal uprising, perhaps sparked by inequality, famine, or religious upheaval. By 600 CE, Teotihuacan was in decline, and by 750 its avenues lay in ruins. The Great Pyramids remained, but the city's people had dispersed, carrying fragments of its memory into the lands of the Toltecs and later the Aztecs. When the Aztecs encountered Teotihuacan centuries later, the city was already ancient, its origins shrouded in myth. They called it the place where the gods sacrificed themselves to create the sun and moon. To them, its pyramids were not human achievements but divine. They walked its silent avenues with awe, imagining that this was where the world itself had been remade. Modern excavations have revealed extraordinary discoveries, yet many mysteries endure. Beneath the Temple of the Feathered Serpent, archaeologists found a hidden tunnel sealed nearly 2,000 years ago. Inside lay offerings, seashells carried from distant coasts, carved statues, pools of liquid mercury glinting like underworld rivers. The tunnel seems to represent a cosmic passage, perhaps leading toward the realm of the dead. Some believe it was meant as a royal tomb, though no remains have yet been found. For decades, scholars have searched for a burial that might reveal Teotihuacan's rulers. Tombs of kings define much of ancient history, the pharaohs of Egypt, the lords of the Maya. But in Teotihuacan, the rulers remain hidden, as if deliberately erased. Were they buried in unmarked graves? Were their remains destroyed, or concealed in chambers still undiscovered beneath the pyramids? The absence is striking, and it suggests that the city's philosophy of power was unlike any other. Murals found in Teotihuacan's apartment compounds offer glimpses into its worldview. Brilliantly painted in red, green, and blue, they depict gods, animals, and ritual processions. Some show the great goddess, a figure with water streaming from her hands, associated with fertility and abundance. Others depict jaguars, owls, and butterflies, symbols of war, night, and transformation. These images are not accompanied by text, yet they speak in a visual language of cosmology, one that scholars are still learning to decipher. Teotihuacan's mystery is amplified by its silence. Unlike the Maya, who chronicled their wars and rulers in glyphs, this city left no voice of its own. It challenges us to reconstruct its story from stones, bones, and fragments of paint. Every discovery brings us closer, but the heart of Teotihuacan remains concealed, as if the city itself guards its secrets. Today, the ruins of Teotihuacan draw millions of visitors each year. Pilgrims climb the pyramids to watch the sun rise, retracing steps once taken by priests and kings. The avenue of the dead stretches beneath their feet, leading into the shadow of the mountains. Yet, as they walk, few can answer the questions that linger. Who built this city? Who ruled it? What visions of the cosmos guided their hands? And why did it all end so suddenly? The silence of Teotihuacan is not emptiness. It is a presence, a vast, echoing enigma that refuses to be solved. Perhaps in its hidden tunnels, in chambers yet unexcavated, answers still await. Or perhaps the mystery is itself the legacy, preserved not to be explained, but to be felt. As one walks among the pyramids where gods were said to be born, Teotihuacan endures not only as a ruin of stone, but as a question carved into the earth, a city that belongs as much to myth as to history, and one that still gazes upward, toward the sun, the moon, and the eternal sky. Chapter 25. The Lost Labyrinth of Hawara. Beneath the shifting sands of Egypt, south of the Great Pyramids of Giza, lies a place that has haunted the imagination of travelers and historians for over 2,000 years. The site is Hawara, near the entrance to the Fayum oasis. Here, Herodotus, the father of history, claimed to have seen something so vast, so intricate, that he compared it favorably to the wonders of the world. He described a labyrinth of incredible scale, with 12 great courts, 3,000 chambers, and a subterranean level that was forbidden to the public. It was, he wrote, beyond all words, surpassing even the pyramids in its impressiveness. For centuries, scholars debated whether Herodotus had exaggerated or whether the labyrinth was merely a metaphor. Yet fragments of truth began to surface in the 19th century, when the British archaeologist Flinders Petrie turned his attention to Hawara. In 1888, Petrie uncovered the remains of a massive mortuary temple connected to the pyramid of the 12th dynasty. Pharaoh Amenhotep III. The foundation walls alone suggested a structure of staggering proportions. According to Petrie's measurements, the temple complex stretched over 300 meters in length, a building large enough to have contained countless rooms and corridors, just as Herodotus described. But Petrie also noted that the temple had been systematically dismantled in antiquity, its fine limestone blocks carried away for reuse in other constructions. What remained were only the lowest courses of stone, like the faint outline of a vanished city. The rest, it seemed, was gone. And yet, the mystery deepened when researchers realized that much of the labyrinth may still lie buried beneath layers of mud and groundwater, preserved in the earth like a sleeping memory. The labyrinth has long been associated with Amenhotep III, one of the greatest builders of the Middle Kingdom. His reign, around 1850 BC, was marked by monumental architecture, ambitious irrigation projects, and a drive to consolidate power over Egypt's nomes, the provincial districts that had once operated. The labyrinth, some scholars believe, may have been more than just a mortuary temple. It may have served as an administrative center, a royal archive, and a ceremonial place where the pharaoh's authority was displayed to visiting dignitaries. If so, the thousands of rooms described by Herodotus could have contained records of law, tribute, and history, an entire library of Egypt's Middle Kingdom preserved in stone. Imagine corridors lined with inscribed tablets, chambers filled with statues of gods and kings, and underground crypts holding the sacred relics of the state. The thought that such a place might still exist, hidden beneath the waterlogged soil of the Fayum, is enough to make historians and archaeologists pause with wonder. In the 20th century, interest in the labyrinth surged again. In 2008, a team known as the Matterhorn expedition used ground-penetrating radar to survey the Hawara site. Their results suggested the presence of an enormous, grid-like structure beneath the surface, one that matched the scale of Herodotus's description. The data seemed to reveal walls and chambers extending far beyond what had been excavated. Yet political and logistical challenges prevented a full excavation, and the labyrinth remains locked beneath the water table, tantalizingly out of reach. The mystery of Hawara raises larger questions about what still lies hidden beneath Egypt's sands. For every monument that has been uncovered, dozens more wait unseen, their secrets still intact. Could the labyrinth contain written records older than anything we have yet recovered? Could it hold clues to Egypt's earliest dynasties, or even to the shadowy pre-dynastic era when writing first emerged along the Nile? What makes the idea of the labyrinth so powerful is the sense that it was designed as a storehouse of memory, a place where knowledge was meant to endure through the ages. If we could walk its halls today, we might find answers to some of history's oldest questions: how Egypt rose from scattered villages to become the first great nation, how its rulers envisioned the cosmos, and how they sought to preserve their legacy against the eroding tide of time. And yet, perhaps the labyrinth is destined to remain hidden, its rooms still dark and silent beneath the mud. Like so many ancient wonders, it sits at the edge of our reach, whispering of a past we can sense but not fully grasp, until the day comes when excavations can proceed. Hawara remains a riddle in stone, a labyrinth not just of corridors, but of unanswered questions. Somewhere beneath the Fayum, under centuries of flood deposits, the labyrinth waits. Its chambers may still hold the echo of voices, the scratch of styluses on clay, the ritual chants of priests. We can only imagine the feeling of stepping inside such a place. Torchlight flickering on painted walls, the air heavy with incense and the weight of history. For now, the labyrinth lives in the writings of Herodotus, in the foundations uncovered by Petrie, and in the data glimpsed by modern radar. Legend. It is a reminder that Egypt's sands have not yet yielded all of their secrets, and that beneath the world we know lies another, waiting patiently to be rediscovered. Chapter 26: The Great Silence of History Across Deserts and Jungles. Beneath ice and sea, through ruins of stone and fragments of bone, humanity leaves behind only traces of itself. A wall here, a broken vessel there, a scattering of words etched into clay. Yet for every artifact recovered, 1,000 more are lost forever, dissolved by time, shattered by conquest, buried beyond reach. What we know of the ancient world is not the full story. It is only the faintest whisper, carried through silence. The silence of history is not empty. It is vast, heavy, almost alive. It is what greets us at every excavation when the dust is swept away and the stones rise again. The ziggurats of Mesopotamia, the glyphs of the Maya, the bones of forgotten kings, they all stand as fragments of something greater, something that slips just beyond our grasp. Entire civilizations, once vibrant and immense, are reduced to ruins scattered like stars across the earth. Why is so much gone? Floods and earthquakes erase cities, fire consumes libraries, wars topple kingdoms, and time itself, slow, patient, relentless, turns monuments into dust. The tombs we have found are a fraction of those that once existed. The texts we can read are only the survivors of countless libraries burned or abandoned. What remains is not the full chorus of humanity's past, but only scattered notes, torn from a forgotten song. And yet, these fragments compel us. The Baghdad Battery, perhaps holding the spark of forgotten science. The Dead Sea Scrolls, offering a chorus of voices preserved by desert air. Stonehenge rising from the English plain like a memory made solid. Mohenjo-Daro, where streets and drains recall a vanished people whose words we cannot read. The Shagir idol, carved by Ice Age hands into a message no one alive today can translate. Teotihuacan, with its silent pyramids that refuse to name their kings. Each discovery brings us closer to knowing, and yet, the closer we come, the larger the silence seems to grow. Perhaps this is the paradox of history, that the more we uncover, the more we realize how much remains hidden. Every solved riddle opens onto deeper questions. Every recovered shard hints at a greater whole that is gone. The mystery of the past is not just what has been lost, but why we are driven to keep searching for it. Some believe it is because memory is survival, that by piecing together the stories of those who came before, we keep them alive, and in turn, we keep part of ourselves alive. Others believe it is because the past is a mirror, one that reflects not only where we have been, but where we might yet go. And there are those who feel something more profound, that the silence itself calls to us, as if the earth remembers what we have forgotten, and waits for us to listen. For even in silence, there are traces. Under the sands of Egypt, new tombs wait undiscovered. Beneath the Amazon canopy, lidar reveals forgotten cities of stone. In the depths of the sea, temples and harbors sleep beneath the waves. Each new discovery reminds us that history is not finished. It is unfolding, piece by piece. Whenever a stone is lifted, a script deciphered, a mystery reconsidered, but there will always be gaps. Whole cultures whose names we will never know. Entire traditions of song, myth, and wisdom that vanished without leaving a trace. The silence between what we know and what has been lost is the true vastness of history, and perhaps it is this vastness that humbles us, reminding us that our story is never whole, that even the mightiest civilizations are but chapters in a book that can never be fully read. In the end, we are left with questions. Why do we, across every age, return to the ruins and peer into the darkness? Why do we lean close to fragments, hoping to hear the voices of those long gone? Is it only curiosity, or is it something deeper, a recognition that in their silence we hear an echo of our own? The great silence of history is not final. It is an invitation to wonder, to search, to remember. It is the breath between stories, the pause before the next word is written, and as long as we keep seeking, the silence itself becomes part of the story. For the tale of humanity is not yet complete. The ruins we walk among are not endings, but beginnings. They whisper across centuries, asking us to listen, to question, to dream. Perhaps the greatest mystery is not what has been lost, but why we continue to look for it. And so the silence remains open, vast, and waiting. The past does not vanish. It only hides. And somewhere in the earth, in the sea, or in the sky, the next chapter is already waiting to be uncovered.